Hey, good morning. Thank you all for joining us today for our first forum of the year. My name is Jana, and I'm a part of the team that organizes these programs for CCIR. We have quite a bit of content to cover today, so I'll keep my notes brief. If this is your first time at a CCIR event, whether in person or virtual, welcome. CCIR stands for Communities Concerned for Immigrants and Refugees. And we began around 7 years ago to meet a community need to have a network for service providers and dedicated community members that support immigrant and refugee populations in Kansas City. So CCIR is hosted through Vibrant Health, but really, we have our sponsors at the Reach Healthcare Foundation to thank for supporting not only CCIR, but a number of other programs that help facilitate the work to build a more accessible and welcoming space for immigrants and refugees in the greater Kansas City area. Our work is supported by a team of health advisors, a couple of whom are our speakers for today. And we're fortunate to have their experience, expertise, and leadership to help us identify needs in the community. We are your partners in the development of a more welcoming and equipped city for immigrants and refugees. We primarily do that in one of two ways, one of which is providing direct service to community members by facilitating programs with the support of interpreters to make sure that our immigrant community members have access to wider discourse that might be happening in the general community, primarily for healthcare topics. And we also work with community members to build toolkits that support the inclusion of services for them, such as the resource guide we are currently working towards building. The other way we support the network is by facilitating professional development opportunities and forums for you all as service providers, such as our forum today. And coming up this year, we have on our radar to provide additional training opportunities, such as trauma-informed care for staff, maintaining patient confidentiality, and et cetera. So if you'd like to continue to stay involved with our work, we invite you to subscribe to our newsletter. For those of you that are in person, there is a QR code in the back of your agenda slips you can use to sign up on, and there are also other QR codes that for other ways you can get involved with our work. For our virtual audience, all links that are mentioned are included in the chat, so please view that. Okay. So to get into why we're meeting today, the past 46 days that have felt like a decade probably, has probably felt like a water hose, like drinking through a water hose with the amount of changes that have come at us, and they've probably impacted some of you more directly than others, but nonetheless, it's change that affects us all. So, of course, there's a strategy in creating chaos, but the goal we have today is to provide a general overview of all the changes that have happened recently, how that might impact your communities, and how you can prepare your organizations and support your immigrant and refugee clients and community members. Because if there's one silver lining we've been learning throughout all this is that it works. Know Your Rights trainings have been working for community and organizations, and there is a reduced impact once people know and feel empowered to use the rights that they do have. Many of you here today are service providers from social work, education, or healthcare sectors, but there are a number of you that signed up because you're looking to become more informed community members. Okay. Yes, there are a number of you that signed up because you're looking to become more informed community members, neighbors. So thank you for your heart, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to showing up, advocating, and continuing to find ways to provide access to necessary services for all. We'll be going through quite a bit of material today, so you can scan the QR code on the agenda slip so you can view the full list of topics that our speakers will be covering today. In addition to the topics we originally promoted, we also took into account the interests and questions you all listed when you were registering. But of course, you may have questions come up throughout the event, so please submit questions in the Q&A box for our virtual audience members. And for our in-person attendees, please feel free to join the Slack and submit questions there. We'll be putting out a QR code on your table shortly. But without further ado, please welcome our first speaker, Raymond Rico. Raymond is an immigration attorney who has extensive personal and professional experience understanding the world of immigration law, including working for the National Immigration Law Center and working for the passage of the DREAM Act. He's been a fierce advocate to fight against anti-immigration state legislation, so we're really glad to have him here today. Thank you, Raymond.
Good morning again. My name is Raymond Rico. I'm an immigration attorney. I've been an attorney for 14 years. About 10 of those years, we've had Trump involved in our politics and impacting immigration policy, even when he wasn't president of the United States. We are about 3% done with the second term of President Trump. If you're keeping count, 4 years is around 200 days, which means every 2 weeks is 1%. We're 6 weeks in. So what we're going to get there, we're going to get through it. A month ago today was the raid in Liberty, Missouri at the El Potro Mexican restaurant. At the time, I was at my desk. Our office is in Mission, Kansas. I was meeting with a family that had somebody be detained the night prior. And so we were troubleshooting, trying to locate the family member, while at the same time, I had a family coming from around the Emporia area to renew their TPS. And where they work, they really only have a few hours that they can take off of work. And therefore, it was important that they renew their TPS filing that same day. And so by the time I heard about the raid in real time, what I heard was that they had already detained people, that some people were already in handcuffs. But a manager at the restaurant called somebody that knew our information, and that's how we were notified. But that person asked us, what do we tell the managers? And what I'm here to tell you is that at that point, when somebody is detained by ICE agents, there are no special words that can come out of my mouth. If I'm on a phone call and somebody puts a phone call up to an ICE agent, if they're going to detain somebody and they have somebody locked up, it is at that point too late. Even if I were to drive the 25, 30 minutes to get to Liberty and in person, there would not be anything that you can do at that point that can stop somebody from being detained. My understanding, reading about it and hearing about it from folks as well, is that they entered into the general area, but that they said they were there on a arrest warrant. But what they do, and they did there, was arrest everybody, around 12 people. They call it collateral. Now, what I don't know, even to this day, is, and I'm not representing anybody that was involved, is did they actually have a judicial warrant or did they have an ICE administrative warrant? I don't know that, but to them, and as you will see, the Constitution are merely interferences for ICE to do their what they see as their job, which is detaining and deporting people. And I also understand that some staff kind of cooperated when they say we have a warrant. You think somebody is an official, federal government official, that whatever they say either must be truthful or you must sort of be passive or agree to do what they're doing, because if you don't, you might be doing something wrong. But I'm also here to say, as we'll go throughout today, that if you don't exercise your rights, you actually give up your rights. And so if you give up your rights, that's when bad things can happen to either you, your family, your place of work. And it's what's important about know your rights is that you have to have it ingrained from the CEO, president, managers, all the way down to the front staff, the person who opens the door. Because if not, then there usually there's going to be a fail point within the process that if you're not exercising your rights and it fails, then things like what happened at El Potro would happen. I hope you're here because events like what happened last month seem terrifying to you, or are things that you believe that someday I might be called into action to protect immigrant rights, the Constitution, protect from such an event happening at your locations. I'm also here to tell you that if it's not you, it's really not going to be anybody else. I mean, a lot of us have gone to national conference nationwide. Somebody knocks on the door of your business or home. Unidos US, LULACs, they cannot stop. They cannot stop. Right now, institutions such as even the party systems, the two-party system right now, nothing has led to a stop of this sort of deportation force being created. And Lord knows the Catholic bishops from Kansas are not going to stop a raid from happening in Kansas City. And by the way, my words only represent myself. So it means that we must go to the sites. We must verify that it is in fact ICE activity at the outset. I have to tell you, there was a lot of misinformation about what was happening out there in Kansas City. But it's important for us to verify what is actually happening. We as citizens must be willing to do the things necessary to protect our fellow neighbors. If you look it up, there's videos happening where you see people enforcing their rights in action. For instance, I believe it was Los Angeles just this week that those who showed up were with a megaphone telling people inside of their home, do not open the door. Have them slide the warrant under the door. Look at the warrant. If it doesn't have somebody's name that they say is in there, then you don't have to respond to it. If it is a judicial warrant, is it a fake administrative warrant? All of these things are important because if the person doesn't know the law, then it's going to be incumbent on us and maybe US citizens, residents, those who do have legal status, to do what is necessary to protect our neighbors. Me, myself, I was born here in Kansas City. I am a US citizen by birth, but to an undocumented father, so I'm not sure what Trump might try to do with me. I've represented thousands of families at this point from the Kansas City area and a few states around the region. I like to believe that I've over 14 years, I've become a trusted voice on immigration. And the reason I know that is because I have a Facebook account and I know there's a group that I can't join called Entre Mujeres. And believe me, they talk. And believe me, you don't want to be mentioned in that group when it comes to the quality of the immigration attorneys. In this Trump 2.0 era that we're living in, I've been told by multiple people that you must be happy that you're going to get more work in this era. And so my response is that's like a janitor saying they're happy when they see a clogged bathroom that they have to undo, or a firefighter being happy that there's a fire destroying a house. So me in my position, I'm sort of being asked by many families, my clients, to put out fires. Yet we elected an arsonist. Or should I use the other analogy? I'm a janitor and we elected a big turd. So I'll stick with the fire example. So right now, the biggest message I'm receiving, and I believe one of the reasons many of you are here, is because attorneys and the organizations that work on immigrant rights, we're being asked to do fire prevention. Whereas my work is putting out fires. And so although I am happy to be here, I do prioritize being behind my desk and actually working with families and working with actual fires that are happening. And I agree with the message. And that's why we need force multipliers. We need all of us to to know enough about how to protect ourselves and our families and our loved ones and our coworkers and our neighbors that we can be prepared to do what is needed when the time comes. So we'll go over a little bit. I'm not sure how this. All right. A few of the things that have been happening around immigration. We'll go over these in a little bit more detail, but this is just a snapshot as to some of the things that we've seen since Trump 2.0. So right now, the repeal of the CHNV, which stands for Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. It was a program that started to allow for 2 years of humanitarian parole entry into the United States so that people from those countries could request immigration relief benefits here in the United States. It came with a work permit, and many people did and have or are currently applying for asylum. That has since been repealed. Part of it started under the last few months of the Biden administration. So one of the Trump executive orders from January 21st is to start allowing enforcement in sensitive areas. So this is new. This is something that wasn't happening before, where basically if you're having a protest, a rally, usually ICE would not see that as an area in which to go enforce immigration law. Why? Because of the balance between your First Amendment protections, your right to be able to peacefully assemble, versus enforcing immigration law. Hospitals, churches, schools during national emergencies. So for instance, wildfires or earthquakes or hurricanes, usually, and the way things have been, that's a place where if you're a victim of an emergency, a national emergency, that they wouldn't care for you regardless of your immigration status, because these are emergency needs. These are protections that this current administration wishes to stop. Now, I do believe we will see lawsuits, efforts to stop these sensitive areas from being open for immigration law enforcement. Just last Friday, there was an executive order to rescind English, other languages other than English proficiency to receive federal services. So if you're a federal entity or you receive funds from the federal government, the law says you must provide care or provide your service in the language of your patient, of your client. So although this executive order does not mandate that you can only speak English, which means end all of your multiple language proficiency services, it does no longer require it. Now, for me, this is not about communication. It doesn't help communication by lessening the amount of languages that people can understand and be able to receive the services. It's more about control over who is allowed to be considered an American. It's about who it's about saying that those who don't speak English are less than. Whereas I believe speaking a language besides English really is an asset, and it doesn't make anybody less American. This is what the Pro English, which is an organization, their executive director said. You can read the quote, but the last part is the part I highlighted, that multilingual diversity could well become the undoing of our country. So that's the belief for those who are proponents of English-only type legislation. Part of the executive order on day one of the Trump administration was something like Stop the Invasion of America Act, or executive order. One of the provisions was, we want people who are undocumented to complete a registration process, get fingerprinted, announce that they are here. The form is not available yet, but they want people to sign up on a USCIS account so that once the form is available, you can sign up. It's really a threat. If you don't sign up, you're going to be given additional criminal and civil penalties for not signing up. There are not a lot of details as far as whether it means somebody would not be able to legalize in the future. However, I will tell you, there will be lawsuits to challenge this once the form is up, or once we know enough to challenge this ruling. What DHS Secretary Noem has said is within 100 days of someone being in this country illegally, they must register with the federal government. They will be fingerprinted. They must announce that they are here. And if they register, they can avoid criminal charges, fines, and we will help them relocate right back to their home country. When they want to be an American, they can come and visit us again. You laugh, and I think you laugh because of why I would laugh. This is not a serious proposal. They don't define in any way, shape, or form what is this ability to come back in. Maybe you're laughing because of the horse, but I threw that in there. If they were serious, they would say, if you register, this is the process we're gonna move forward with to help you legalize, or we would take away the need for certain waivers so that somebody, if you leave the United States, can come back in quickly. That is not what they're doing. This is a heads I win, tails you lose sort of proposal. It does not in any way, shape, or form honor the Fifth Amendment protections against self, either incrimination or divulging that you do not have to divulge your legal status. That is not something you have to do. So imagine everybody here. Imagine that person that you just know doesn't like you. They think you are, I don't know, a terrible person, an a-hole, let's just say. And imagine that person tells you, my birthday's coming up. And if you don't buy me something really expensive, like a dozen eggs, for instance, for my birthday, if you don't buy me a dozen eggs for my birthday, you're an a-hole. What are you going to do? You're not going to buy the dozen eggs. You'd rather, those are expensive right now. If they already think you're a bad person, and whether you buy the eggs or not, you're still going to be a bad person, you're not going to buy them that birthday present. Same principle applies here. You can watch media over and over and over again, from Noam's mouth, Holman's mouth, Stephen Miller's mouth, President Trump's mouth. What do they call immigrants that are here without legal status? Criminals. If they already think you're a criminal, and they say, if you don't sign up, you're a criminal, I'm an attorney. I would recommend nobody sign up for the registry. Is that a violation of federal law? It could be. First, I want the courts to have a crack at figuring out whether this program is constitutional, whether it's legal, what needs to happen with this program, what are the protections, a whole myriad of things. A lot of details have not yet been under consideration. There's going to be litigation. Hopefully there's an injunction. Delay will become our friend if they stop this program until the courts figure it out. But me, myself, I would not recommend that immigrants sign up for that program. Local law enforcement. Currently, part of an executive order is basically encouraging all states and local government entities, law enforcement entities, sign up for 287G programs, which means cooperation with ICE, codified, and there's also a threat involved as well that we want to pull federal funding for cities that their municipalities are not cooperating with ICE officials. Even just a few days ago, there was a hearing with the four mayors, Denver, Chicago, New York, and one more, Boston, where they were really litigated. They were called criminals themselves. They were told that they should face obstruction of justice charges. They should not have any further federal funding. So there is an effort to bring about 287G type programs across the nation ongoing. Missouri and Kansas currently have bans on municipalities from adopting ordinances that prohibit cooperation from ICE. Many of you know about the Safe and Welcoming Wyandotte campaign that part of was municipal IDs, but part of it was also a state law said that cities cannot do it. And for the record, Governor Kelly did sign that bill. Kansas is attempting right now, there was a hearing to mandate that not just you can't do a non-cooperation agreement, but mandate that you do work with ICE authorities Right now, the KBI is training officers to conduct immigration enforcement. That's an initiative by Attorney General Chris Kobach. Here locally, the questions would be of Mayor Lucas and of Mayor Garner on the KCK side. There's a lot of municipalities, so it's a whole checkerboard across the full municipalities. But at least for KCK and KCMO, there's an opportunity for us to weigh in. On the Kansas side, my belief through what I'm hearing is that if there are federal laws or state laws that say the KCK police must work with ICE to enforce federal immigration law, I'm not hearing a lot of fight. What I'm hearing is that they're going to comply with what these laws may ask the city of KCK to do. And Mayor Lucas is very interesting. I listen to his Sunday talks many often, and he has talked about immigration. What he has said is, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but that basically those that are here seeking legal protections like asylum and refugees, Kansas City welcomes. I've yet to hear him address undocumented immigrants that are also such a lifeblood to the city of Kansas City, Missouri. And so I do not know where KCMO stands when it comes to working with ICE protections as far as a policy, but we have work to do, and we have some questions that are still left unknown. Birthright citizenship. Currently, there was an executive order that has been blocked by the courts to say basically that anybody who is born to an undocumented parent or is not a U.S. citizen by birth. It's an attempt to reinterpret what is in the amendments of our Constitution, what has been decided by Supreme Court decisions for a century, a couple of centuries maybe. And so the courts, the judges that stopped this from being implemented said that this is a blatant violation of our Constitution. And so I don't believe that this will see the light of day, but a lot of it could depend on our United States Supreme Court and whether they weigh in on what has been precedent for many, many, many decades. Currently, the federal government, the Trump administration, they want to start using the military to enforce federal immigration law. And when they declare an emergency, that opens up, at least the idea is the ability to use additional resources, things that are not currently normal, such as using the military to enforce immigration law, using those funds to deflect funds to pay for a border wall. As we saw during the COVID era shutdowns, that Trump, during his first administration, downplayed the significance of protecting us by keeping our distance from each other, all the things that came with COVID. He downplayed it on that end, but he upgraded the importance when it came to the border. He said, because of COVID, we must stop the flow of anybody coming into the United States, which was basically his perceptions and they actually shut down the border. They shut down immigrant visa processing. And so people were trapped trying to come in, but they weren't able to come in. Why? Because of the COVID national emergency. So what I expect is additional language from Trump moving forward to try to use a national emergency. You're hearing rumblings about saying cartels in Mexico are a national emergency, fentanyl is a national emergency, and therefore laying the groundwork for what I think might be bans of countries, their populations from being able to enter the United States. The first law that Congress passed this administration was the Laken Riley Act. It was a devastating, tragic murder. The law that resulted from the use of that tragic event changes immigration enforcement in the area of immigration bonds. I highlight the word accused because that is the key point that is new. Prior, an accusation of a crime does not mean you are guilty of that crime. Now, when you allow for an accusation to be enough to deny anybody an immigration bond, that means the person cannot leave detention until their case is ultimately decided. Um, and they're looking at things like theft, petty theft, shoplifting, taking a candy bar. I'm not sure about, does this only mean for adults, or can children also, be detained indefinitely if they lack legal status? I'm on email exchanges with many immigration attorneys, and there's at least a few persons that are getting caught up. One person was driving a motorcycle. That was his motorcycle, but he was stopped because the officer believed the motorcycle was stolen, and so detained the person. But guess what? If you're accused of stealing a motorcycle, but it's your motorcycle, that's enough to fulfill mandatory detention under the Lake and Riley Act. Again, that is new. The person was proven to not have stolen a motorcycle. That person, I believe, today is still detained, trying to work out their immigration court relief. I was asked to talk a little bit about documents that somebody should have in their possession. If you have a current case filed with the immigration, USCIS is the main area. You should carry that paperwork or have a picture of it ready to show an officer or an ICE agent if and when that time comes. Does it fully protect you from being detained? Maybe not. My hope is that if somebody sees your A number and maybe makes a phone call, that they would say, this is not a priority for any kind of using of our resources, and would not do so. People who are residents, the law does say you must carry your residency card with you. I would say for all of you in the room, consider a power of attorney, which can have multiple benefits. Make sure it's done correctly. Make sure it's done with somebody who knows what they're doing. I mean, if it lacks one provision in there, it could be deemed null and void by a court if you're asking for things such as transfer of your assets, home, car, and most importantly for many people, custody of children, or what to do if something happens to you with ICE. I do know of a few attorneys that offer power of attorney services. But don't go to a notario. We've seen notarios work in the back of a coffee shop, work in the back of an insurance agency, tax preparing services. They say, hey, we're not lawyers, but we work with a lawyer in California. What's that attorney's name? I don't know. My business card just says immigration services. It doesn't say I'm an attorney. It doesn't have, if you ask them for their law license, they'll say something different than giving you their law license. Don't go to groups that say you don't need an attorney. I say this not because I'm an attorney. I say this because it is much, much, much more difficult to, I'll use the word clean up a faulty application that's already been submitted than to get it done correctly the first time. I have family that is here undocumented all over the country, and many times I am not the person that ends up representing them, because it's easier if there's someone representing you lives in the area where you do. But I don't tell anybody that I know and love that they should go to a notario. I say go to an attorney, even if it's a payment. A lot of times notarios charge as much as attorneys do, but I was asked to talk a little bit about notarios, and I should have just left it with Kendrick Lamar. There's a lot of questions right now. Should I apply for public benefits? Should I apply for things like FAFSA, Medicaid, state and local benefits? Should I file my taxes? I have an I-10. What should I do? It's difficult, you know. I'm a U.S. citizen. I will never know what it is to be undocumented. The best I can do is try, and I can't do it, but I can try to say, if I were in the position of either my client or the person asking, the person who's fearful, but I have the knowledge of an immigration attorney, what would I do? But first I'll say this. I would never tell somebody you must do. You must sign do your FAFSA for your children who might be U.S. citizens. You must sign up for Medicaid. Because if the fear is there, and the fear is always real, I don't want to have somebody do something against their will, against their abilities to make their own decisions for for their lives. But the answer to the question, and I just gave about an hour-long presentation about FAFSA a few weeks ago, what I would do if I had a child at that age ready to file for FAFSA protections, I would do it. I would still do it, even knowing what I know, even knowing that I don't have a crystal ball that can project what's going to happen in the future. And the reasons are the benefits, if you qualify for them, your family, I would lean on the side of go for the protections that you have now. Majority, maybe not all, a majority of people who are asking about 2025 benefits have received benefits prior for their children, 2024, 2023, and before. The one way to say it is this: if you filed for benefits before, you're already in the system. So to not apply for benefits now doesn't really protect you if one day the government seeks that information for any kind of immigration law enforcement. Same goes with FAFSA, same goes with most state and local benefits. If you qualify right now, and this could change, I would say if your family qualifies for a benefit, apply for it. Do not lie, do not make up an immigration status to receive a benefit that can have dire immigration-related consequences. There are still protections, and I also believe that this administration will not honor a lot of these protections, but they are still there, and there can actually be defenses in a court of law if information about you is obtained in a legal way. And so protections like FERPA, protections like HIPAA, protections like the Privacy Act of 1970 something, say that there must be notice. The federal agencies must let the public know that information you share with us will be or can be shared with XYZ other entity. And so happy to answer questions about these. I do not claim 100% expertise on every single state benefit, every single agency, but I'm always happy to try to troubleshoot with a family or a client. Where are things heading? Of course, I put the tip of the iceberg analogy because that's what I believe. I believe that what we've seen so far is just the tip of the iceberg. I look at my currently filed clients, their pending cases in our office, and I think often, like, has anything happened that impacts this category of client? And there have been some, but the laws, the processes by which people have legalized in 2024, by and large, have remained intact if they were legal laws that were passed by Congress. And so I put that caveat because most of the protections that were brought about by Biden through executive order have ended under Trump. So there is a line of demarcation between what options are available. But almost everything that was passed by Congress has seen few impacts, but I expect more to come. Absolutely. Right now, TPS is under attack, temporary protected status, for many different countries. I do not know, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do not like what I'm seeing about the ability for TPS to be extended for almost all countries moving forward. I believe this week, Ukraine, even Ukraine nationals were told your TPS your protected status is no longer valid. We have not seen an effort by this administration to repeal DACA as of yet. I expect that to come. We have not yet seen the reinstitution of the public charge that is much, much more intrusive and inhibitive of people to do their legal statuses. I expect that to come. I expect more to seek out enforcing our border enforcement provisions by military, by state officials there, National Guard troops from every state that says our state is now a border state. We see that happening here in Missouri. We see that happening all across the country. Asylum law has been just completely decimated and devastated. That is an area of law that I think they still have more coming. Right now, we have not seen a whole lot from the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice runs the immigration court system. I am waiting. I do a lot of deportation defense cases. So I'm waiting for bad news to come on that front. one of the things that Congress passed in 2010, I believe, 2009, 2010, was the provisions that started the U visa system. And right now, U visas, the one thing that the Trump administration has said was, even if you're a victim of a crime, victim of domestic violence, whatever kind of crime, are you protected from our immigration law enforcement? And the answer now is no. You are not protected by this administration for victims that bring forward, call the police or bring forward charges or work with prosecutors in the courts to actually get criminals off of the streets. That person, this federal government believes is not protected. Again, a lot of these things will see themselves worked out in court. And again, delay might be our friend on a lot of these provisions. One of the biggest things that's going to come up this year is Congress. Are the congressional members going to give the Trump administration the resources, the money, the tools they need in order to build their ideal deportation machine? And that's where we come in as well. We have a voice to try to impact whether or not Congress does allow this administration to build the machine. They're still utilizing the resources that were there when they started a few months or a few weeks ago. But they're going to try to get more. They're going to try to do more, and they're going to try to implement even the Lake and Riley Act. The DHS says we cannot enforce this without additional resources. So we see things happening like trying to build camps in Guantanamo, trying to open up in Leavenworth, Kansas, a detention facility right here in our backyard. These are things that we can try to impact. How are we at on time? Okay, I just have about 3 more slides. So know your rights. This is a very, very important while we're here. This is what Borders Czar Tom Homan said. They call it know your rights. I call it how to escape arrest. I've seen pamphlets that say, here's how you escape ICE from arresting you. Don't open your door. Don't answer questions. So again, he conflates people exercising their constitutional protected rights with basically breaking the law. So that's what we're dealing with. On the other hand, you have Stephen Miller, who says part of the problem is that people don't know about their rights enshrined in the law. We are using the legal system to advocate for their rights. Sounds like a Stephen Miller, known champion of know your rights and Trump White House official. He was not saying that about immigration know your rights protections. He was saying this about how parents can use the law to read the curriculum in the educations that you're receiving from K through 12 and how to basically block implementation of was it CRT, critical rights theory, and things of that nature. What I fully believe why we're here today is because know your rights are powerful. It can stop a lot of things just based on knowing what your rights are and using them. If you give them up, you can't use them. And I also fully believe that every time somebody knows their rights, learns their rights, and then knows their rights, one of these two guys will lose a hair follicle. So maybe I'll go back to, let's see. So first, an administrative warrant. It's very, very difficult to see. But you'll see at the bottom that it is signed by an immigration officer. It does not have the necessary language. It's not signed by a court, an objective magistrate, or a district court or municipal court. These are not effective to enter into a home. If you see one of these, if someone shows up at where you work, it does not count. It is not an enforceable warrant for somebody to enter your home, enter your vehicle. These are very, very accessible online as well. You just Google the difference between an ICE warrant and judicial warrant, and you can print it out in a better way than it appears here. This is a screenshot, so it didn't come out very well. This is an example of an actual judicial warrant. Now, I will tell you as an attorney, you have to honor a judicial warrant if it gives you what this document needs to be enforceable. But you can even challenge this. For instance, if it gives you the wrong name, the wrong address, they should have a timeline. Like, when should this warrant be exercised? by, and if it's past expiration, you don't have to honor it. Even if you get one of these, that doesn't mean you have to open the door immediately. You should also call an attorney to see this is what's happening. Hopefully somebody can get there in time to step in, or maybe not even an attorney, but somebody who knows how to handle when you see an actual warrant, or and what it means if you have one of these warrants. So in short words, we'll just go over the left side. An actual warrant needs to be signed by a judicial court, issued by a judicial court, signed by a judge, states the address of the premises to be searched. And again, make sure it's the right address and make sure it's the right names. And it should be specific as to the time frame in which that warrant is enforceable. If it is an ICE warrant, you do not have to honor it. The mentality, I think, is what's most important. And for me, that mentality is ICE can go wherever they want to go, but you're not going to enter a home. You're not going to enter a healthcare facility and a school unless you have an actual enforceable judicial warrant. And that's a mentality that I do believe is not currently present, but it needs to be ingrained in all of us, that just because you have a badge, just because you're an ICE official, does not mean you have the right to search a premises because you say you are there to do so. And so we will go over this more. I'll be here for a little while to answer questions if there are specific for attorney questions. I have full faith that our presenters will be able to handle it if I have to leave a little bit early. Thank you very much.
So my name is Micah Kubik. I'm the executive director of the ACLU of Kansas, and so very pleased to be here with you this morning. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being concerned about this issue. I'm especially happy to be here with my friend Raymond Rico, who is a great champion for this issue and a wonderful, wonderful guy in the community. So it's a great thing to be here today. I do not have a slideshow because I have a very sincerely held religious belief that PowerPoint was created by the devil to torment me. And so I will not have any slides. You just get me talking today. As I said, I work for the ACLU of Kansas. For those of you who don't know, the ACLU is a national, nonprofit, nonpartisan, non-political organization founded 105 years ago for one reason and one reason only, and that is to defend the rights that belong to every single person in this country under the Constitution. And I think it is especially important that we say today every single person, because it is in fact the case that every person in this country has rights, regardless of citizenship status, regardless of documentation status, whatever. There are some folks running around who want you to believe that some people have rights and not others, and that could not be more false. Every single person in this country has rights. There are different sets of rights that attach to different folks, but the Constitution is for absolutely everyone. And it is our job to make sure that that is made real every day in every way. So I was thinking a little bit about what I wanted to say to you this morning, how I wanted to approach this. You'll hear some things as a repetition from what Raymond said, because repetition is important. That's how we remember what we're supposed to do, is through repeating it over and over. So you'll hear some repetition. But I was thinking a little bit about what I wanted to say. And on the drive here, my father is from the deep South, where storytelling is both a art and a pastime. And so whenever I'm trying to look for guidance, for direction, that's one of the places that I go is to stories. And so as I was driving here, I was thinking about the very first story that I ever heard as a child, the first one that I can remember. It is not great literature. It is not particularly sophisticated, but I promise you it's one that most of you have heard before. And the very first story that I can remember hearing as a child was the one about the three little pigs. Anybody remember that? Right. So what happened, right? Three little pigs decided they wanted to build a house. The first little pig is at least a little complacent, maybe a little lazy, and so decides to build a house made out of straw. The big bad wolf is watching from afar and comes along, and when the house is done, he huffs and he puffs, he huffs and he puffs, and he blows that house down and eats the first little pig up. The second little pig is a little bit smarter, has been watching, and so he builds a house made out of sticks, Well, the big bad wolf still comes along. He huffs and he puffs, he huffs and he puffs. He blows that house down and eats the second little pig up. The third little pig is wiser than all the rest. The third little pig decides to put in the time and the effort, builds a house made out of brick and mortar. He lays a strong foundation. And so when the big bad wolf comes along, he huffs and he puffs, he huffs and he puffs, he huffs and he puffs, but the house does not blow down. So when we are told these stories as children, they are supposed to entertain us, but they're also supposed to inform us. We're supposed to learn something from them. They are parables, not just entertainment. What is the lesson we are supposed to learn from the story of the three little pigs? Well, we're supposed to learn the value of a plan, supposed to learn the value of hard work and strategy. We're supposed to learn not to be complacent to the dangers that are all around us. And we're supposed to be wary of those who would wreak havoc and chaos and destruction everywhere they go. Now, what could that have to do with what we're talking about today? Right? You already know the answer. You know the answer. You heard Raymond. We're going to spend the next 4 years listening to Donald Trump, Kristi Noem and her horse, Chris Kobach, and all of the enablers huffing and puffing and huffing and puffing and huffing and puffing. There's going to be more huffing and puffing than you could ever believe. They are going to try their darndest to blow down the house of the Constitution. They're going to try to blow down the house of our rights. They're going to try to blow down the house of decency and democracy. They're going to spend 4 years huffing and puffing. And our job, every single person here and every single person you know, our job is to lay the strong foundation, to do the work now, to do the labor, to build the house of brick and mortar, so that when they get to huffing and puffing, it does not blow down. That's our job. That's our job. And that means we have to be intentional about it. It means we got to know our stuff, and it means we got to actually do it rather than just talk about it. So there are 3 points I want to make to you today about how we can do that. 3 things that are important for you to know, 3 things that are important for you to be working on in whatever space that you are in to make sure this house does not blow down. The first one is about knowing your rights at the individual level and making sure that the folks that you serve know their rights at the individual level. So if you go to our website at aclukansas.org, 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 you will find a place that says resources and know your rights. And you will see some handouts that you can distribute. If you get in touch with us, we're happy to get you printed copies of them as well, right? Available in English and in Spanish. And we have them in other languages available on request too. But know your rights, know your rights. As Raymond said, if you know your rights, if you know them, if you practice them, you're going to be in a lot better shape. And so there's a bunch of things that we could say here. There are a few that I want to highlight in particular. The first is, again, the difference between an administrative warrant from ICE and a judicial warrant. A warrant is strong. An ICE removal order is weak. That's the most important thing to know about the two. Yes, they're both pieces of paper issued by government officials. The judicial warrants usually look a little fancier. They put a little more into the graphic design of them than they do the immigration removal orders. But a warrant is strong and an ICE administrative order is weak. A judicial warrant you have to honor. It'll be signed by a judge. It'll tell you the date. It'll tell you the place. And if someone comes to your house with a judicial warrant, you have to honor it, assuming that all those things are correct. If they come with an ICE removal order, all you have to do is nothing. Nothing. Not a ding dang thing. If they come and knock on your door, ask. Ask to see what they have. Ask to see their paperwork. Sometimes they come without even the removal orders, frankly. Sometimes they come just to be harassing, right? So ask to see the paperwork. That's the first thing about knowing. You have the right to see the paperwork. If they come to your door and they have paperwork, don't open the door. Have them put it up to the peephole or slide it under the door. Because once you open the door, you have granted access to your place and they can do more than they could under other circumstances, right? So have them slide it under the door. If an individual is stopped, everyone knows or hears on TV, right? You have the right to remain silent, et cetera, et cetera. That is true in the immigration context as well. Just because an ICE agent wants you to talk to them doesn't mean you have to. You have the right to remain silent in that context as well. So many of the protections that exist in the police and law enforcement context exist here too. ICE officials are not police. They wear the little vest that claim they are. They are not police. But many of the rights that individual people have are, in fact, similar in this context. So you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to a lawyer. Unlike in the criminal context, the government will not provide a lawyer to you if you are not able to afford one, but you are still entitled to a lawyer and to request one, and you don't have to talk without a lawyer present. You have the right to ask if you are being detained or can leave. Sometimes they want to draw out the conversation without actually detaining someone. You have the right to ask, am I being detained? Am I free to leave? And sometimes they'll try and draw the conversation out and just keep on asking the same questions over and over and over again. You have the right to do that. All of these are rights that individual people have where they don't have to just roll over the moment an immigration official shows up. And that's the most important thing for folks to know. Yes, we have to comply with the law, but you don't have to just roll over immediately based on an immigration official showing up. So know your rights at the individual level. If we do that, we can constrain many of the abuses and we can contain some of the fear and harassment that we know exists. So know your rights at the individual level. The second point I want to make is the organizational side of knowing your rights. Many of you are service providers. Many of you operate facilities that folks come to because they need help or they're looking for services. Your facility has rights here too. In the same way, if someone shows up with a removal order, you ain't got to give them access to your facility. You can have public facilities and private facilities, right? You have spaces in your facilities that are open to the public, and you have spaces that are private. If your space is private, you don't have to open it up to immigration officials absent a judicial warrant. They can do what they want to a large degree in the public space. So if it's a public waiting room, for example, that anyone can access at any time, that's going to be a public space. But if your waiting room is private and only for those folks who are coming to seek services, then you have greater ability to deny access and entry to other folks absent a judicial warrant. If they come and present you with something, and they have a warrant, yeah, you got to let them in. If they come and present a removal order, it's up to you to decide whether you want to assist them or not. It's up to you to decide that. You cannot harbor fugitives, right? There is a law against that. You can't do that. But the level of collaboration and cooperation that you provide to removal orders is really up to you. As you heard from Raymond before, now there is this sensitive locations guidance that the Trump administration has given, which is that every place is fair game for ICE officials to operate. So it's something that you have to be really cognizant of, right? Like it is already happening in many places. It is going to continue to happen that immigration officials are going to show up at healthcare clinics, at service providers, at schools, at churches. And although there will continue to be resistance to that order through the legal process, you have to make decisions in the meantime about what you can do. For that, I would encourage all of your organizations to consult with your own legal counsel, right? You got to make a plan for yourself to determine what your level of risk tolerance is. But even here, the answer is not, we just have to do whatever ICE says because they came and their little jackets said police on them. That is never the answer. That is never the answer. The answer is always that you have some level of options here. And the big determination here is going to be public areas versus private areas. And the big distinction is always going to be between the judicial warrant and the ICE administrative removal order. The other thing about your organizational rights is that you, as organizations, as entities, you can educate your clients about their rights, making sure that they know, making sure that they have access to materials about what their individual rights is perfectly within your ability to do as organizations. It is education, it is community engagement, it is not advocacy, it is not lobbying, it is not engaging in the political system. It is none of those things. It is educating people about their rights under the Constitution of the United States. Nothing more. Anyone who tells you that that counts as advocacy doesn't know what they're talking about. And you can tell them I said it. It is not advocacy. It is not politics. It is not partisan. It's none of those things. It is just making sure that people know what they are allowed to do and what they are not allowed to do. And so you have every right to do that and should, in fact, do that to make sure that people know their rights. So that's the second one that I wanted to mention to you, the second way that we build this foundation that we need. The third one is around advocacy, right? So I just said what isn't advocacy. Here's what can be advocacy, right? Which is being in touch with our elected officials, especially at the state and local level, to say that we do not want them to engage in collaboration with the deportation agenda. And there's a bunch of ways that that is showing up. Right. So at the state level, especially in Kansas where I work, we are catching hell in the state legislature. Every day, there's some new bill that is designed to create an environment of fear, harassment, and intimidation for immigrants. Many of those bills are not going to make it into law. Many of them, they don't even want to make it into law. Many of them are just about creating an environment of fear and harassment and intimidation. Right. The fear is the goal, not the bill. The fear is the goal for many of those. But we got a bunch where we need all the help we can get from advocates, from organizations, from everyday people. We got a bunch of them. We got one that gets rid of in-state tuition for undocumented people in Kansas, something that we passed 20 years ago in Kansas, something where Kansas was on the forefront, did something good, got national headlines 20 years ago for doing something good. And then for 10 years, they tried to get rid of it. Then they went away for a little while, and now they are back again trying to get rid of in-state tuition. All that means is that folks can't get the education that they want and deserve, that our economy suffers, and that we're mean to young people in the process. That's the only thing that that bill does. It's outrageous, right? So that's one that is alive that we need to work on. There's this other one that would require every single law enforcement agency in Kansas to apply for any cooperation program that the federal government creates. It doesn't even just say the infamous 287G agreements. It says if at some point in the future the federal government comes up with a new kind of collaboration and cooperation, you got to automatically apply for it. From the same people who say they care about local control. That's crazy. That's crazy, right? So we've got that one. And then we have them at the state level, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, which is under the Attorney General office, so under Chris Kobach, enthusiastically applied not just for one, but for two separate collaboration agreements with the federal government. So far, the Kansas Highway Patrol, which reports to the governor rather than to the Attorney General, has declined to do that. It is really, really important that we make sure that that continues to be the case, that the Kansas Highway Patrol not sign up to be frontline immigration enforcement officers, right? Because that's what these agreements do. They turn your local police or highway patrol or KBI, whatever, into frontline immigration enforcement officials, takes them away from their current responsibilities, distracts from their current responsibilities, and makes them do the job of ICE for it. ICE doesn't, in turn, agree to go and like police the jaywalkers, right? So there's not a trade-off of responsibilities here. It's just the folks who are doing all of the other normal law enforcement are taken away from that in order to do immigration enforcement instead, and are not compensated in any way for it, right? So it really is a theft of money from local government and from your local resources, plowing it into that, rather than other things that may be important at the local level. So we got to make sure at the state level that we are saying no to all of those things and making sure that we're advocating and getting folks present so that folks understand how important these communities are to our states, that they are an integral part of our states. We have to do the same thing at the local level, because as Raymond touched on, Kansas City, Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri in particular, there are a bunch of jurisdictions. These are ones that do not yet have 287G agreements. So there are laws in both states that say you can't pass a municipal ordinance that says we won't collaborate, right? So they're not allowed to pass a law that says we're not going to do it. But right now, it is not the case that they are required to do each one of these individual things, right? And so each agreement, 287G, it's the part of the statute that it comes from, right? It's a very elegant name, 287G agreements. You have to apply for those, right? So the local government has to apply, or the federal government will ask you, will you do this? And you still have to sign a new agreement, right? So there are steps along the way. It's not an automatic thing. There are steps along the way. And we need to make sure that our local government officials, especially in the two largest communities, say we are not going to sign a 287G agreement that turns our local police officers into immigration agents. These two communities in particular, I think, have enough problems on their hands already that they don't need extra responsibilities for local police. But we got to make sure that they do that because so far, the signs have not been good. So far, the signs from these local elected officials have been to say, we're going to be really sad about it. Hatred is bad. We're going to cry while we collaborate. Our job is to let them know that that is not our expectation of them. Our job is to remind them that there are real people involved here. This is not some sort of chess game with Washington, with Topeka, with Jefferson City, that there are real people involved here. And we expect them to say no as long as they possibly can. We can understand that at some point the law may require them to say yes, but for as long as they have a choice between yes and no, we expect them to say no, no, no. They're not going to do that unless they hear from us, though. They're not going to do it on their own. They're only going to do it if they hear from folks like you and our friends and allies across this community. And then the last one here on the advocacy part is, again, that there is this proposed detention facility over in Leavenworth, not too far away from us here. So this is a place where local government, again, has an impact and where local folks can make an impact, because the proposed detention facility there, what happened was a few years ago, Leavenworth had a private prison facility operated under a contract with the Bureau of Prisons and the Marshal Service by a for-profit private company called Core Civic. Core Civic operated this prison for the federal government and did such a horrifically awful job of it that the federal government, not exactly known for being like super lenient and concerned about the human rights of incarcerated people, shut the thing down. It was so bad that this facility has wound up in publications and textbooks around the world on how not to operate a carceral facility. The human rights violations there were horrific. People were literally punished. A man in a wheelchair was punished by putting him in a hot shower for hours. Numerous people died, not just inmates, not just the folks incarcerated, but the staff as well, because the facility was so poorly run that it endangered every single person there every single day and was regarded as the single worst for-profit prison in America. You got to be really bad for the federal government to shut you down. But they did. But Core Civic, the for-profit company that operated this facility, still owns the building. And it's still sitting there, and there's tumbleweeds, right? And the ceilings are caving in. They want to do something with it. They have an investment they want to protect. So they said, well, how about we turn this around and make it an immigration detention facility instead? You're going to have more folks that you need to detain for that Trump administration. How about we open up this facility. And to be clear, we should be clear. They started this under the Biden administration, right? Because no one should be under the illusion that the Biden administration was great for immigration either, right? Donald Trump is the worst president on immigrants' rights. Joe Biden was the second worst. You can be mad at me for saying it. I don't care. They went to the Biden and then the Trump administration and said, let's reopen this as an immigration detention facility. And so that process is ongoing now. We already know what the Trump administration is going to say. Yes, gladly, we'd love to. But before we can get to that point, the city of Leavenworth has to grant a special use permit to the company to operate the facility there. Who knew that planning and zoning and city permitting was so important? That is our leverage here, right? Is to encourage the city of Leavenworth not to grant a special use permit. And if they do that, it gets a lot more complicated for CoreCivic and for ICE to open this facility as a detention facility. And let's be clear, we should not want that facility reopened. It doesn't matter what your position on immigration is. I think I know what the people in this room think about that. That's not even the most relevant item for the city of Leavenworth, right? They're concerned about whether the facility is going to be safe, humane, something that's going to be conducive to the community or not, right? So you got 3 strikes there already on top of the immigration issue. If we want to disrupt the deportation agenda, this is a great place to do it. At the special use permit granting meeting of the city of Leavenworth. We have more information about when those meetings are. There's one later this month, and then the final decision is next month in April. But the city of Leavenworth needs to hear from folks, especially in that community. So if you know folks there, please encourage them to speak out about it. But they need to hear from all of us too, that this is not something that we want in our community for a variety of reasons. So those are the 3 points I wanted to make to you today. Those are 3 things we got to do. One is about individual know your rights. The second is about organizational knowing your rights. And the third is about the advocacy steps that we need to take right now to disrupt. We already know, right? We already know for the next 4 years, we're going to deal with huffing and puffing and huffing and puffing and huffing and puffing. We have been through that before. We have thrived through that before. We can do so again. But it requires us to do some stuff. And that means not wallowing in despondency, not wallowing in despair, not allowing ourselves to get so depressed that we don't get out of bed in the morning, not caving in to cynicism and skepticism, but rather knowing that when we do the things, when we do these things, they can work, they can move us along. And so no matter how much huffing and puffing Donald Trump and Chris Kobach do, if we do this work, if we lay the foundation, we can succeed. Because now is certainly not the time to live in a straw hut of complacency. Now is certainly not the time to putter around in a shack of sticks saying, oh, maybe we can just make a deal with the big bad wolf and everything will be all right. No, now is the time to build a house made out of brick to do this work. And if we do that, the house of American democracy and the house of our Constitution will not fall down.
I take a second to make sure this works because I'm not a loud speaker. Everyone can hear me though? Can you hear me from here? Okay. Can you hear me now? Let's see. Okay. So do we have the slides coming up? Thank you. Yeah, so Trinidad with AIR, Advocates for Immigrant Rights and Reconciliation. Has anyone heard of us before? I want to make a point about that because a lot of the way we're going to have a community defense in this time is more people knowing each other. I'm saying each other, not just knowing AIR. AIR, we think very collaboratively, and I'm going to talk a little more in a bit about our rap response work, but I want to highlight that there's so many hands coming together to make that work happen. It's not only AIR, and that's the way we're going to have a way forward, is a lot of people in the community kind of being able to collaborate on a community defense approach. It's founded in knowing your rights. We've been going over that, but I've been doing a lot of rapid response trainings in the past 3 months. And I started to notice some patterns that have been helpful. Also, just seeing how things play out in different organizations, and especially schools have been particularly worried lately for obvious reasons. But I've noticed how people are processing what's happening and starting to find solutions. So some themes I want to point out, and we're going to practice, to be clear. So I'm pointing out these themes as a strategy to keep going back to when we start doing some practice in a second. So in a lot of this climate, the major time where we're going to be vulnerable is when we don't know our rights, right? So ignorance. If you don't know your rights, you don't know how to stand up for your rights. And a lot of us have not had to always worry about that until the climate feels more intense like it is now. So if part of the major concern is ignorance, and the way you combat that is knowing. So knowing your rights, knowing, but also in our communities, knowing each other, and then also self-knowledge, knowing ourselves, right? Where am I at right now? Because it's one thing to know your rights, but like, do we practice that moment where we might have to actually uphold our rights? And if I know myself, I know that, okay, I know my rights, but I know I'm often too nice. So do I practice for myself to be able to stand up for my rights if I had to, right? So that I'm not just a pushover at the wrong moment, knowing yourself, right? Fear is a big aspect. Everyone's noticed that theme. Has anyone felt some fear in the past few months? Okay, thanks for your honesty. But yeah, that's part of the tactic is some of the policies trying to be pushed forward. I mean, some of these things won't even have the intended effect they're talking about on the media, but even just having such a barrage of constant policy changes or attempts at policy changes instills fear in communities. So many people I met at training say, kids who aren't going to school or people aren't going to the court dates at the municipal court even. It's a crazy climate. So that fear is having a real effect. So the way we start to combat that is trust, building trust, community connections. So we want to combat the ignorance with knowing. We want to combat the fear with the trust building, right? And then the other aspect is going to be the exhaustion, this constant barrage of changes all the time. It's exhausting to keep up with. Has anyone felt exhausted? Are you the only one who's felt exhausted, or has a lot of people? Yeah, this is having a communal effect on people, both in the immigrant community and also people who maybe aren't even immigrants, but just care about their immigrant neighbors and are just concerned about the civil rights violations that seem like they're coming. So to combat that exhaustion, you would do the opposite, which you need to be able to keep in this work in the long term, and you need to get enough rest and we have to pace ourselves. I'm going to come back to that at the end with some, I've been adding to these trainings that we really need to be aware of, like the sociological aspect to be able to stay in this long term. So that said, if we can go one slide down, or am I allowed to use this remote? Does that work? Oh, it does work. Okay. Okay. So yeah, in response to what we're seeing, we have the Rapid Response Network. Yeah, it's a community defense approach. It's not unique to AIR. I mean, many immigration groups have developed these things across the country. It's not the first time we've seen lots of ICE activity. So we know that the Rapid Response model works. It's founded especially in knowing your rights. You've been hearing a lot about your rights today, I think. The borders are like last month he admitted on a public interview that he was frustrated and ICE wasn't able to do as much as they wanted to do in Chicago because too many people knew the rights. So it's actually working. It's always worked. It's still working, and that's going to be key. But I'm going to give a challenge to you all internally and externally. After this training today, it's not enough to come to the training. Like, how are you practicing applying this, and how are you getting this out to your network? Everyone here is connected to networks in the work, but also your personal networks, even people you know at the coffee shop. How do you spread this everywhere in ways that are going to be effective? And I'm not saying this as a rhetorical point. I mean, you should write down right now for yourself, how are you going to get this out there? Because this is how we're going to have a safer community as people connect and get this stuff out there to every network. So I've seen this play out in some schools who came to trainings in the past few months. And then later when I followed up with them, they was telling me, okay, we get it. We know our rights. We don't have to let ICE onto our private property without that warrant signed by a judge. But what about the school pickup that's out on public property? And we talked about it. We just had a conversation about it because we knew, okay, we don't have one exact legal answer there to that kind of fear. But what do we go back to is, well, communities know each other the best. So the best plan is going to be what comes from your own local community. So I have a friend, another organizer named Daryl Answer. He does ABCD style organizing in his neighborhood. He has this phrase I really liked. He said, when more people know each other in a neighborhood, crime goes down. So some people say, hey, those neighborhoods over there, those look like dangerous neighborhoods. We need more police officers. He'd say, no. You need to build trust and connection to community. Okay. And he said there's actual studies for that. When more people know each other, crime goes down. So I'm applying that. I'm not just talking about crime. I'm just talking about safety from ICE activity. When more people know each other, That's how we're going to have an effective response. All that organic work, if every neighborhood, community throughout the area, if everyone had their own organic plan with their own people, you're going to see a community prepared to defend themselves. So how do you apply these things to your specific space? You're going to have to talk with your own community about it. What's the plan? Maybe it won't be the perfect plan, but just by the fact that you're developing a plan that comes from your people, that's what's going to make it more sustainable. It's all that organic work. And if you think about it, if every community was doing that in the area, we would win, because ICE in our area does not have a huge staff. I mean, there's concerns that they might try to hire more people. They're trying to mobilize KBI, whatever. But in the end, they don't have a huge staff in our area. And if every community was mobilized, then by the numbers game, from a strategic perspective, we win, right? So that's something to keep in mind. So let's go here. We like to go over this a bit. The current system we're worried about is under the Department of Homeland Security. That's so ICE does their work there. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. ERO is enforcement removal operations. They're like the kind of the policing part of ICE. And then under DHS is also CBP. At the border, HSI, Homeland Security Investigations. That's going to be more workplace investigation. For some reason, I've been told they also do like child pornography investigation. Usually in the past, I was not worried about HSI. I was more worried about ICE. Now HSI is a point of concern in our area. Does anyone know why? Feel free to call it out. So anyone saw the videos about on the media about the raid of the restaurant in Liberty? So that was actually not ICE, it was actually HSI. Now, even though it was not ICE, it was about the same pattern of behavior that kind of concerns us. They might go into a place looking for one person in question who may or may not even be there, and then other people just get caught up as collateral. That's the common pattern we're going to be worried about. TSA is under this, and then USCIS. So anyway, DHS system has been in place since about 2003. Does anyone know why 2003? You can say it louder. 9/11. Okay. So 9/11. So there's Rice has had a podcast some years ago called Homeland Insecurity. And on that podcast, they interviewed some of the people in government who were back there at the time who were forming this system that we have in place today. They've outright admitted that like they just didn't know what they were doing. There was a lot of fear suddenly from the country about terrorism. And this is a common pattern we're going to notice is everyone always wants to associate, even in the media, sometimes well-intentioned media just picks up on the same talking points, and immigrants can be associated with criminals and terrorists. That's a common pattern. That's a pattern of fear, right? And that's what justifies, it's unfortunate that we have to deport so many people, but all those Venezuelans who came must be they could be criminals and gangs, so we got to deport them. That strategy, it's the same strategy we're hearing today from that kind of Trump camp, but it's not a new pattern. This is the same pattern that has been. DHS was response to 9/11, all this extra security on the border, even though the terrorists who attacked us they did not cross the border and they came here through legal means. And somehow we've misplaced this fear always on the illegals, right? And a side note, we don't use that word illegal. Obviously, people could be undocumented, they might not have a status, but no human being can be illegal. So I have a personal story about this. When Trump was coming the first time, or before he got elected the first time around, I was once affected by this rhetoric because the church where I grew up, I went to church one day and someone took a picture of me at church. I didn't know it. And they reported me to the FBI because they thought it looked like a terrorist. And I didn't know it was that easy. You can just go to the FBI's website. So I fortunately am a citizen, but even for me, like under this kind of climate, how many acts of racism are empowered by this? Someone could try to ruin your life overnight because you went to church. What got me was this guy from the FBI came to my house. He just said it was his job to investigate. He knew I wasn't a terrorist, whatever. But he mentioned the same person who had reported me at that time. This was early 2016. He said the same person had also reported multiple other Hispanic people at local churches who she just thought they all looked like terrorists. And it's a strange climate to be in. So these are concerns we have to take seriously at this time, and we have to take seriously what it means to know rights and stand up for ourselves and for one another. So let's start practicing now. So we have to practice by using our eyes. The theme I'm going to is how we're going to stay safe is by connecting and protecting, but we can connect and protect each other. The communal security model has got to be a communal responsibility, not only the responsibility of one security guard at your door. So 90% of security, though, they say is observation. So let's practice the observation skills. Has anyone seen ICE in person before? If you had to. Oh, okay. So you might be familiar with some of these images. In the top left corner, there's ICE in uniform. And now, can you see where it says Immigration and Customs for Enforcement on their vest there? Okay, but what does it say in much large letters? Are they police? Okay, good. You all know. Good. So ICE is not local police, they're a federal agency, right? Local police is not ICE. But they know that when you want to come, that kind of language makes you want to comply with what they say. And we know you've heard about your rights. So if you end up complying with the wrong things, they get away with doing what they want. When they get into your space, if they say that you let them come in your space, they kind of do what they want. They get away with stuff all the time, what we call the collateral arrest. So the major defense is going to be able to be observing for these things, watching for these things, and making sure you don't let them in your space in the first place. Through our rapid response networks, there's been times where we've had anonymous calls from someone who worked at a hospital, I won't say which one, who told us ICE tried to come to the hospital just a few weeks ago. And fortunately, security wouldn't let them in because they didn't see a warrant signed by a judge. So the stuff is working, right? But you have to be able to be aware and watch out for these things. Top right corner, CBP and HSI. Again, if they were in uniform, they could look kind of similar. And you're not going to normally see CBP around here, but we have seen HSI, right? Bottom left corner, there's a picture of ICE arrest in progress. Okay. So they might be if they have someone that they're trying to detain, they might spend weeks investigating the person, knowing the patterns and trying to figure out when to box their car in maybe in a public space when they leave their workplace or vehicle. And they want this to happen fast. Okay. They don't want a lot of attention on it because media attention can be a deterrent for them. But the bottom right corner, that's ICE when they're not in uniform, So they can often go around without a uniform on. Was anyone aware of that already? Yeah. So immigration lawyers will tell me that even if they're not in uniform, they're supposed to have some kind of badge somewhere. It could be around their neck, it could be on the side, but it might be a jacket over it too. It might not be obvious in the heat of the moment. So that can be very scary for the community when people are coming around. And besides, if that wasn't bad enough, this is also not a new tactic. They've done this forever. But if that wasn't bad enough in the past month or two, we've seen like at least 3 incidents across the country of random people impersonating ICE, attacking immigrants, saying, I'm ICE, show me your visas. One of those cases happened in St. Louis. It's not that far away. So it's a time where we have to be aware and observing. So I want to cover the raids. Everyone's always worried about the idea that, what if there's a raid and they go in for that meatpacking plant with 100 people? And while that can happen, it's a concern. In our area where, for us, anytime ICE is active in the community is potentially like raid stuff, right? So you saw with the restaurant in Liberty, they came in it was HSI in that case, but it was the same pattern. Came in for one person who wasn't even there. Instead, it gets 12 of the coworkers, had nothing to do with it. So anytime there's activity out there, yeah, this is a risk. They told the workers, our rapid response network works fast. When that happened, way before the media attention, we had some people out there within like less than half an hour after that happened. So our network's moving fast. We're kind of quieter about the work, usually by word of mouth right now. And we were able to, our network was talking with the staff there at the restaurant. They said, yeah, HSI came, they got 12 people, and they told them, we're just going to detain you for fingerprints. Well, they didn't just detain them for fingerprints. Many of them were sent to Chase County, one person to Kentucky for some reason. And fortunately, a few days later, because of the network connections, a lot of those people affected were in contact with lawyers, and some of them have been able to get out. So our network's very well aware of what's going on, but we've been hesitant to make this a big media thing every time because the climate feels different right now, right? Where there's security concerns. So rapid response model, though, is what's going to give us that defense that I've been referring to. So that strategy, knowing each other, trusting each other, connecting and protecting, being observant. And this is basically about knowing your rights to record and so on. And the roles look like this. We have a hotline. I'll go down to the slide in a bit, which shows our hotline. But we have a hotline people can call, and or sometimes we see social media posts shared with us, so we can go out and verify what we're seeing in the community. I'm saying we is a very large we. It's not only AIR. There's people in this network involved, friends from KS Moda, ACLU, from so many different groups, and we all kind of connect on this issue because we all know this is a shared communal responsibility. It's not only one organization's responsibility. The whole community, we have to engage to protect each other. So just a reminder, you can feel, I'm going to be around at the end today. So if you want to do more role plays, we can practice role plays, because it's hard to know how to do this stuff until you practice it. You got to practice, but we don't have time for that in my session right now. But I'll stick around if you want to do role plays. And if you want to be part of our larger network, where we do the rapid response work, we use a signal group. We have formed a confidentiality form. You'd have to sign for that, but feel free to talk to me about that afterwards if you're very interested in that. But if you want to be part of that work, you'd have to be an adult. You're going to need a car. We're not asking you to compromise on this. Like you'd have to be involved or kind of dedicated to the mission of an ICE-free community. We don't want people in that network who say sometimes ICE does the right thing. Like, no, we ICE so often gets it wrong, right? And it exists under a system that, in my opinion, is just not a functional system. So the steps could look like this. We might get a call into a hotline. We put it out to our network, seeing who's available or close to the reported incident and who can get out there as soon as possible to possibly record. If we don't get there in time, because ICE can happen, they can do their stuff fast, but we still support the family or the individual affected if possible. And at the very least, verify what happened, because there's also lots of false reports that get spread around on social media. So we try to verify before things spread too much so that we can give accurate reporting about what's going on. Okay. So that said, we're about to do some practice, and we're going to need to know our rights when we're filming. So the major things to go back to over and over again are going to be the First Amendment, and then there's two other amendments that are going to be very relevant in this work. Does anyone remember what they are right now? Feel free to call it out. Fourth, yeah, someone said fourth. One more is really important to keep in mind. Fifth, good, okay. First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment, you want to keep coming back to these. And in the context of the work we're talking about today, the First Amendment implies that you're able to record law enforcement, including federal agencies like ICE, if they're doing stuff that you think is questionable. Fourth Amendment is that protection against unfair searches and seizures, so you don't have to let into your space without the warrant signed by a judge. Fifth Amendment, right to remain silent if you're being affected by ICE, or remind someone who's being affected by ICE, don't sign anything without a lawyer, remind people. First, Fourth, and Fifth. So when we look at some of the videos in a second, if you ever have questions about how exactly do you apply all this knowledge, sometimes it will feel complicated, but try to keep going back to the First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment as a principle. Okay. It's going to be a lot of information really fast here. Lawyer friends at point, this is a really good video, but this is a good rundown of like, yeah, you can film in public space, not private space. Lawyer friends have pointed out that there's lots of gray areas about, in some cases, what could constitute a private or public space. So if you have questions about that in your particular org, I would definitely recommend you consult a lawyer and try, kind of examine your particular space and your needs. just anyone call out things that stood out to you that are important to remember. Someone else said stay quiet, right? Okay. Other things to point out? So the principles, we're not trying to accidentally incriminate the immigrant family or individual being affected. We're trying to just see if ICE is or HSI is doing something questionable or saying something questionable. You might be able to at times, say out loud to remind the family of the Fifth Amendment rights, right? But for the most part, we're there. If we were filming, you want to be a silent observer because we're hoping if we get that recorded, we take it to lawyer friends as soon as possible, see if we can do something with that. In some cases, it might help people's cases, but we don't want to do something that's going to accidentally hurt someone's case, right? So if we can go back to the slides for a sec, let's skip a bit here. So we're not there to be a hero in this case, right? You can't physically intervene in the ICE arrest. They're a federal agency. Okay, but you can definitely, it's within your rights to question it, to record it. And we're trying to be supportive, not, if we escalate the situation too much, if you're a citizen, you can escalate in a sense and like, can ICE really do anything to you, right? Unless you're obstructing justice. But the family being affected, the immigrant the individual being affected, are you making it worse if you escalate the situation? You want to keep these things in mind. I know it can be hard if you see something that's hard to see, but we're trying to be there to be a silent observer. And thinking about the long game, can we bring this to the network and work on a long-term strategy to help the family's case? And especially working with immigration lawyers. So yeah, but you want to be very observant, document everything that you can see. And you might remind the family being affected of the rights. Don't sign anything about a lawyer. ICE will try to lie and get people to sign stuff that could make them in effect be deported faster, and so on. They do these tricks all the time. It's not new. So we got over the amendments, first, fourth, and fifth. We got over the warrants, and if you saw ICE in your area, maybe in your neighborhood, you can feel free. We don't usually recommend undocumented persons go up and approach them. There could be extra risk there, but it's up to each individual to decide what risk they want to take or not take. But this is a great way for allies in communities to say, well, ICE has no authority over me as a citizen. Like, what if I go walk up to them? I see them in my neighborhood. I'm worried about my friends in the area. And I just go ask them, hey, who are you? Are you ICE? What agency are you with? They might not answer your questions. They might not answer, but you can question it. You can ask them what's going on here. Okay. So now let's start practicing. So as we get the video loaded up, and I think we're going to have to turn the volume up to hear what's going on in the video. But is everyone ready to start practicing? Because I'm going to ask you to stretch out a bit and stand up. Because I want you to start imagining like you were called to as a first responder to an ICE activity in progress, and you are going to help record. So I would like everyone to stand up and imagine like you came to the scene and you're trying to be supportive to the person being affected here. So yeah, they're stopped outside of a municipal courthouse. I think they had an accompaniment network, and they knew in their area there was a pattern of ICE trying to get people after they leave their municipal court dates or something like that. So they knew the pattern in the area. That's why they had a plan. And the undocumented people in question were in the back seat, and they had a plan to get someone in that car as soon as they went into public property and to start driving away. ICE stops them. From my understanding, lawyers tell me ICE doesn't normally do car stops, but they could if they had like probable cause. So he's stopped by ICE, and he's knowing his rights and he's standing up for his rights because he's very well informed. This is one of the best examples we have on video, but there's only one thing I think he could have done a little better. So I want you to start observing and listening carefully to everything he says and ICE says, and I'm going to ask you what you observed.
Mark, I'm going to put you on speaker. Those are not warrants of arrest,
yes,
sir.
They are, sir. Warrant of arrest of alien.
Yeah, warrant of arrest of alien not signed by a judge. It's not a judicial warrant. I have no obligation to oblige by that warrant.
This is a lawful warrant
signed by a judge
of the Immigration and Nationality Act, and an official designated with that authority.
Are you hearing this, Mark?
Yeah, I'll tell him I'm on my way.
Our attorney's on his way.
Okay. What's that gonna?
That's not a warrant.
That is a warrant.
No, it's not. It's a Department of Homeland Security order.
It's a warrant.
Okay. No, it's not a warrant. It's not a warrant under the Constitution of the United States.
It's a warrant under the Immigration and Nationality Act of the United States.
Okay, that's fine, but it's not under the Constitution. You have no jurisdiction over me as a citizen. I'm the driver of this vehicle.
Okay, are you familiar with Title 8, Section 1324 of U.S. Code?
Somewhat.
Somewhat. In what regard?
I'm studying to be a Department of Justice accredited representative, so I've been through trainings.
Okay.
And I have copies of actually in this box right here, I have a copy of a real warrant and a copy of that, just so people know not to listen to that.
Okay. So you're aware of the statutes governing transporting and harboring illegal aliens in the United States?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian,
And,
why don't you just wait? I'll be there in a couple of minutes.
okay, thank you.
There, you saw it all happen, you recorded. What did you see? What did you observe? Call things out. Feel free to be loud. What? Yeah, whoever filmed was careful not to highlight the undocumented persons in the backseat. It's very good. Other things. Yeah, they had a plan to have like that lawyer connection that they could call. Good. Didn't act, yeah, didn't only the windows only crack. He didn't accidentally say ICE could come into his vehicle, right? Very small crack, right? Other things. You knew he was talking about. Do you think he practiced? Practiced, right? Other ones. Any other comments or questions on that one? Very good question. Hey, okay. He was being they were playing the game here with ICE in a sense, and an immigration lawyer friend had pointed out to me that in this video, one of the things he could have done better though, in that situation, just from the very beginning, just saying, "Am I free to go? Am I free to go?" Because just push ICE to stop wasting my time. Am I free to go? Because if I'm free to go, then yes, I can leave. If they say you're not free to go, does that imply I'm under arrest? And then say, well, if I'm under arrest for what? Well, he's not actually under arrest, so like stop wasting my time. So that, yeah, and so that goes to the, kind of that Fifth Amendment stuff, because ICE is trying to be tricky, trying to get him to just be tricked by what they say, so that he'll allow them to enter the vehicle or allow people to come out of the vehicle. But the vehicle, I believe, counts as private property. Correct me if I'm wrong. So ICE can't just randomly get in there. So very good for pointing that out. Other things, anything else to point out on that one before we show a bad example next? I would have rather been able to see the officer's face and badge number, but probably the angle they were in the car, they did the best they could. But yeah, so yeah, I don't have any hesitation about recording that. And you could say, even if you could you get the license plate of their vehicle? And also for the community network, kind of in our community sleuthing, to pay attention to what ICE's patterns are. If we can notice what kind of vehicles are becoming common, that helps the whole community network. So if we go back to the slides now, thank you. So yeah, if you're ever interacting, yeah, you can record. If they say step back, just step back. And if they try to take your phone as evidence, you just say, do you have a subpoena for that? Okay, they can't, again, you have Fourth Amendment protections against unfair searches and seizures. They can't just grab your phone, right? But we know of incidents in the country where they have just grabbed people's phones and tried to erase what you recorded. So that's why there's advice about trying to have a passcode on your phone. That's not relying on the facial recognition, because people get around that. So next video, this one we usually use as an example of what could have been better. Ultimately, it was successful because there's a community presence that shows up and ICE leaves. Okay, so that's the good part. But the one recording, while well-intentioned, she seems like she's got some adrenaline going on, and she kind of escalates the situation a little bit. Would rather have a silent observer where I could hear what ICE is saying, and I could show that to the lawyer later. Hey, what do you think about this? Was that incriminating what ICE did? You know, I can't hear everything ICE is saying in this one. Okay, so if we can start playing this video here.
The van behind the red car is the ICE car, and someone from another car just got to them. And they're pulling in front of a black truck where some people from the courthouse are walking up to their truck. The woman in the purple jacket I had seen her coming out of the courthouse. Do you have a warrant? Do you have a warrant? Are you with ICE? Do you have a warrant for arrest? Do you have any identification? Do you have any identification that you can show them?
So this. Excuse me, ma'am. Please step back.
Picture right here. Do you have any identification that you are showing them?
Bitch, please. Bitch, please. That is not my husband.
Do you have no? Do you have?
You are not. You are not.
Who are you? Who are you?
You are not part of the court. We do not know you. Please back away from my husband. Please back away from our car before we call the cops.
Yeah.
Before we call the cops.
Are you getting your gun?
Please get out of here.
Does anybody have any ID? Does anybody have a warrant?
No. No, you don't need to show anything to this bitch.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 agents. We have 3 cars.
They're asking my husband for his identification. We have no idea who any of these people are. We literally just walked out of the courtroom and we're being approached right now. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
This is absolutely ridiculous. We don't know any of these people.
Get the fuck out of here.
Get the fuck out of here, you son of a bitch.
Is that one? That one?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
What did they ask you? This woman asked my husband what his first and last name was, asked him for his ID, showed a mugshot to him, and told him that that was him. It was not even the same picture. Who the hell is she?
Did they follow you out of the court?
Yes.
Man,
they were in the same. They were
I was
there
wondering
near
why
us,
she parked
and then
right
we
here.
came out of
I
the
had no
courtroom and she
idea, but
followed
then-
us. I don't understand what's going on.
Well, we think they're ICE agents.
Could you see clearly where ICE agents had the badge? Is that a little frustrating? Okay, imagine how the family feels. In this case, they had the wrong person. The person they were trying to question was actually a citizen. So you can imagine why his wife was really annoyed. Things you saw. Point out what you observed. You feel like she got too close to it? Okay. What was that? Antagonistic. Was she kind of escalating too much? Okay. Too much of filming of the family. Okay. It could. But I think her pointing it out is a little escalating. What could have been better? Well, if you were there, what could you do better if you had to record? Point it out. Okay, she pointed out she does ask the right questions, but she's a little too close. Maybe she could have taken a step back and get the larger scene. Other things that could go better. Yeah, I wanted to be able to better hear what the agents were saying. It's hard to hear what they're saying. It's really hard to hear, but I've seen this video so many times. The agent in green, she does say something like, "See this picture, that's you," and the guy's like, "That's not me," and it's hard to hear in the video. I want to be able to hear this thing, show it to the lawyer. Okay, last 2 comments, and I'm going to wrap up my time here. That would have been great if she could have got the license plates very clearly, yeah, on the video or photoed. Other things? Instead of over and over again saying, "Do you have a warrant? Do you have a warrant?" Just reminding the family of the rights and then trying to be a little quieter. So yeah, that would be good. So these things take practice. It's a skill you got to practice. Practice for your friends and family. Have a community plan. I'm going to be here hanging around toward the end if you want to do a role play. We've done those and that helps people practice. But this is the time I have. I want to make sure Celia has time because what she has is really important. So thank you all. Thank you for this.
All right. So if you can't fully see me, I hope you can hear me. We have a couple of minutes left on this piece. I want to make sure that we cover this piece here, but I think there's going to be some time for question and answer. I encourage you, because we're not going to have enough time to get to everyone's questions and answers, write your questions down now. So if you've thought of something, I'm going to say we're going to move fast. I'm not going to allow for time to be like, let's wait. Think of your questions. All right. So my name is Celia. And as they bring up my slides, I'm going to talk to you about this workbook that you have been staring at this entire time. And if you speak Spanish, you probably already looked through it and were able to figure out some stuff. If you don't speak Spanish, we're going to talk about it. All right. So my little disclaimer here, and I like the way that Raymond even gave himself a little bit of a sign of the cross and said, this is just your word. So I will say, you may know me in community from being a mental health first aid instructor, for working in healthcare. But today I'm going to put on just my regular Celia Ruiz. And if you can say Celia Ruiz Calderon, I'm Celia Ruiz, born and raised in Kansas City. And I just try to stay involved to where and when I can. And I put up my limits because I'm trying to take care of myself. But this workbook that you have in front of you, I created this back in 2017. Again, these are my own words. When the previous administration was already, when they were here. And I was hearing from families and individuals saying, oh my gosh, is this really going to happen? Is this really going to happen? What if it does happen? What am I going to do? Lots and lots of fear, lots and lots of worries, the same exact words that we're hearing now. But it doesn't matter how many times we say it, it's still scary, it's still fearful, it still feels the same way, and or if not more. And so then I decided to move into a space where it was like, all right, if we know that this is a possibility, and I want to say that I don't know if anyone else's hearts has been pumping like this over these past couple of hours. Everything from when Raymond started talking and saying, oh my gosh, that's for real. To hearing Micah talk and say, oh my, it's funny. Yes, but hold on, you're for real. And we see these images that Trinidad shared with us and like, those are real. And we heard Micah say real families. So this pumping of the heart and saying for real, that's what moved me into this one to be like, okay, I can't do this. I can't do this. But what are the things that we do know? This might really happen. And if this might really happen, this means that a parent, an auntie, an uncle, a cool single guy, a cool single girl might be leaving right now with nothing. And that's not fair. I like graphic design. I like art. I did not want to create this front cover that had this red circle and say stop and danger and be careful. Rather, there's some nice colorful colors because I really want us to focus on the dignity behind this. I don't want to say happy stuff, but the cool, awesome stuff that our family and our community members have already built and created. They've created some pretty cool families. They've created some very, very cool businesses. And I want families to protect those things. So if we can bring up the slides and then I will start clicking. So I'm not going to go through this entire workbook, but I am going to show you what's in here. So the QR code that you see here links you to a WordPress website. This WordPress website is my regular free way of trying to keep this out in community, that I don't have to pay for it. Nobody's sponsoring it. It will hopefully, it's sitting there since 2017 and it's still there and hopefully it's still there for forever. But on this website, you will find this workbook in a downloadable PDF format. You're going to find some flyers. So you're also going to find this presentation because I also don't want you to depend on me to come out and talk to everyone and repeat these words. So I like to say this workbook belongs to no one and it belongs to everyone. So my name isn't on there. There's no organization that gets to take ownership of this. There's no one that's going to get to sell it or say, we just want people to have, I want people to have it. And so then thanks to CSER, Communities Concerned for Immigrants and Refugees, the REACH healthcare funding, and that back table and in front of your tables, there are these. So take some back and share them, right? Also on this website, I uploaded this Boston Medical Family Preparedness Plan. This is from 2017. This one, I've updated it to this 2025 with some small tweaks, and it may continue to be updated. But this Boston Medical one is an English language one. This is 47 pages, so it's very long. The pink one in Spanish is 20. You don't have to be an expert, but if you can just at least have an idea of what this looks like in English. But if we can come back to the PowerPoint, I'll show you what's included here. So 20-page Spanish language, only in Spanish, non-branded. And this encourages families to have conversations. Have you thought about your cars? Have you thought about your pets? Have you thought about, and I just had this conversation with a group last week called Azul Esperanza that supports families with children with disabilities. So their specific question was, have you thought about IEPs? Have you thought about caregivers? Have you thought about who your child with special needs, who they have trusted relationships with? Okay. So lots of questions, all right? So then in the workbook, and you can kind of glimpse through here, some of the topics that are listed in here are adults. And I say this, does my boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, the kid, the parent to my child, do they know what my full legal name is? Do my kids know where I'm from? Because what if I just say Mexico? Where are you going to find me in Mexico, or are you going to find me in Guanajuato? And Guanajuato's a state. Are you going to find me, shout out to our little town, are you going to find me in El Derramadero? You know, where am I from? Okay. You know, if we had a conversation as a family, did we say we're a very multicultural, metropolitan, you know, community? What if I fell in love with someone from Honduras? So, hey, you know, partner, friend, you know, what's cooler, Honduras or El Derramadero? Right? What if we have these conversations? What are our plans? So it doesn't need to be scary. It is scary, right? But can we make our own decisions? You know, I was talking with Raymond a little bit earlier about like, okay, criminal law and then immigration law. Does my partner, does my family know if I have a criminal attorney? Or do I just have a criminal attorney and not an immigration attorney? Who is that person? Do I have an alien number? Do I have an I-10? If somebody's going to look for me online on the ICE detainee locator, do they know how to look me up? Do they know my date of birth? My kids, what's their information? Finances. I can still access my money from another country, you know, because it's still my money. But hold on, I forgot the name of the bank. You know, what is my account number? My debit number, my PIN number? How are you going to send money to me? How am I going to pay for the things that I want? Oh, I'm going to leave my kids here with someone I'm going to care, or they're going to take care of them. How am I going to send them money over here? Who owes me money? Who owes me money? Be ready to, you know, go tell them, hey, this is an emergency. I need my $3,000 now. Okay. We can come back to and we can leave it up on the PowerPoint. Because I want you all to keep looking at the QR codes and some of the other topics that are there. So health. I have heard from individuals with chronic conditions, diabetes specifically, saying that if I were to be detained, I'm afraid I'm going to die in jail because I don't think they believe that I have diabetes and I need my insulin. Okay, what kind of insulin do you take? Are your prescriptions up to date? Because we said things can happen very fast. Things can happen very fast. You know, and then there's some educational information in there on powers of attorney, knowing your rights, organizations, mental health, just little bits in there, okay? How you can help others with this cuidémonos, and cuidémonos means let's take care of ourselves. You can help others by maybe sharing some of these workbooks. On the website, QR code is there. You can print off some flyers. I know that a lot of our organizations have small budgets, so I put them in a full page, or it's 2 on a page, or it's 4 on a page, or it's 16 on a page with little QR codes. So you can just download the PDF, print them off, share them. And what it says there, ¿qué hará en caso de una ausencia en su familia? The header there says, what would you do in case if there's an absence in your home? So maybe you don't speak Spanish and maybe you don't know what words to say. There's some materials, and I'm always open to suggestions and whatever else, I can do or we can do together. This might be a way to just, I don't speak Spanish, but I'm concerned. Here's something I found today. So you can help folks by sharing the flyers, sharing the workbooks, share resources to what Trinidad mentioned earlier. You're connecting, you're getting other resources, everything you're learning today, do something with it. You can also help individuals learn how to keep this information safe. I mean, I'm thinking of Revolución Educativa, an organization in Northeast Kansas City. And there's also others. I think Guadalupe Center was doing it too, like digital media literacy. So can we teach people how to create a Google Drive? How to, I say scan in quotations, but it's take a photo and it's upload. Is it about having a safety deposit box at a bank? Those are things that, we've learned along the way as far as technology. We can share it with others. Discussing safe places to store their plan. All right, now this next piece, because I heard that there were some questions in the registration wanting to know, all right, what do I say? Wait, we've already talked about knowing your rights. This is not a know your rights training. I'm also a mental health first aid instructor. And has anyone taken mental health first aid? Just raise your hands. All right, does anyone know what G stands for? Give. Somebody needs to know it. Give reassurance and information. Give reassurance and information. And mental health first aid means tell a person a truth, and through that truth, give hope. So what I want us to do as we support others, in that circle there, it says center dignity, respect, and autonomy of the individuals and their loved ones. This is not about me. And our families or individuals have created some pretty cool lives here. Let them make choices. We heard earlier, I'm not going to make you do anything. I'm not going to tell you you have to do things. Our people are smart. And they're very, very capable of making their own decisions. So just reminding ourselves to center them, center their autonomy, their dignity. Remember to value people. And so then, on that left-hand side, what I want you to do as you approach, because I'm thinking of the G, give reassurance and information. As you approach individuals, I want you to remember to acknowledge your role and limitations. I'm not an attorney. I can't change this law right now. And I don't say this specifically, but maybe my volunteer organization or my employer or my church or my I don't know, wherever it is that I'm working or helping or et cetera, maybe they don't allow me to talk about these things right now. Hey, we understand. This is my role and my limitation in this space right now. This is what I can do. You can keep reading through there again. If you go to the QR code, you're going to see this whole PowerPoint. You're going to get copies of the PowerPoint. But I want to point out at the very bottom, do not provide legal advice if you are not authorized to do so. We all have some access to some really good information today. But I will never tell people, ooh, you should do this. Ooh, you qualify. Ooh, I heard. I'm not an attorney. I can say, you know what? There's some really good organizations that can help guide you through this. And so then these are ways that we can have a conversation. Because I think one of the questions that we heard is like, what are some scenarios? What are some words that people could say as a teacher, as a clinician, as a service provider? Because, and initially what I had under having a conversation, I was going to put it, talking about it. Sometimes we don't even want to use the word immigration. Sometimes we're afraid to use the word immigration. Am I going to get in trouble if I use the word immigration? It's okay. I understand. We're not all going to have the same comfort level. We all don't have the same experiences. But that doesn't mean that we can't approach this conversation with our families, because it is a big conversation. And our personal lives and our work lives, This is what we talk about every single day. And it's exhausting. Okay. But how can we ground ourselves? So on this left-hand side, I'm going to remind myself I am not an attorney. I can do this. I'm not equipped to do blank. We heard this earlier. Things are changing every single day. Whatever it is that we heard today might change tomorrow. Reminding myself that my client, my family, my individual, they can make their own decision. And I can support their decision-making journey. I'm not going to read through all of these, but I'm going to read a couple of maybe what are I like for real words. How do you support someone? How do you give this hope? How do you provide reassurance? How do you say, oh my gosh, this whole world is crumbling down and I don't know what to tell? Can I maybe just say, we're in challenging times right now, and I just want you to know that I'm here for you. Have you talked to your blank about making a plan in case of a possible detention, separation, deportation? I'm proud of you. Do you want to talk about maybe your decision that you're making? Oh, I'm so proud you were willing to have this conversation. We don't tell people that enough because there's lots of scary stuff. And I think all of you as service providers, and I heard this somewhere else, you all have the relationships. You have those trusted relationships. So you can tell people those things that you know. Don't be fake. But you can say, I am so proud that you came to your appointment today, because I know sometimes people aren't always going to their appointments. I'm so glad you made it in. Right? How about, oh, I wish I could give you an answer, but I'm not an attorney and I don't want to give you any wrong information. Have you talked to an attorney? If not, here are some resources. Are you following blank organization online? Let's see. All right. Talking about immigration can be tough, but we sometimes have to talk about tough things. All right. Other ways you can say you're supporting someone or you're supporting an individual or family without actually saying it. Walk the talk off the clock. You're in a very cool, supported space right here, but sometimes it isn't as easy to be pro-immigrant, pro-LGBTQ, pro et cetera, because once we go home, once we go back to other communal spaces, people are paying attention. So walk the talk, even if you're not on the job. Do not ask for people's immigration status if you do not need it. If you don't need it on your intake forms, don't collect it. Don't ask people. If you don't need to know it, don't ask it. Are you, I don't need to know it. What I like to say is like, this is kind of my field, but here's a workbook on blank, 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 what we just talked about. If you or anyone else you know might benefit from making a plan, let me share this with you. I didn't ask to know anybody's, but I can say this is applicable to blank communities or people in blank situations. And then I guess I'm thinking about, oh yeah, that accepting alternative forms of identification. Maybe if you don't need that Social Security or et cetera, fountain cards, consular IDs, familiarize yourselves with what those are. And then, so here I wrote, this is not the end, because I was thinking about this and it worked out very well with what I heard earlier today. I heard from both, actually from everyone previously. So I'm going to say this. So in our mental health first aid class, what I like to say is we're going to learn some stuff. It's up to you what you're going to do with it. So today, you will learn some stuff. It's up to you whether you decide to advocate nationally, locally, municipality, at your job, right? I mean, that's reality. We heard it earlier, right? Can an organization create policies that are welcoming, that are not requiring blank information? So is that advocacy very much at home? Is it in a larger space? Educate what you're learning, share it with others. the know your rights, everything we're hearing, the practicing, all of it. You can keep practicing. We have to keep practicing every day. So advocate, educate, empower other families, individuals, other organizations to be involved, to go through some autonomous decision making. But I ask that because this is very individual and family centered, center dignity. Like if you decide that you're interested in this work and supporting others, do it with a lens of dignity. Families don't want to be don't want to be looked at with woe is you. Whoa, you. No, whoa, you. I'm so happy for you. You have created such awesome things. And so then I'll kind of stop there because I'll keep going. And I know we're going to have some time for Q&A, and you should all have your Q&A ready, okay? So I'm going to stop talking, Jonna, but I would just say that. Do something with what you're learning. Do something with what you're learning today. So, all right, thank you.
So Lisa asked, are the red cards provided by ILRC accurate, correct, and useful?
Just so quick note, the red cards are also basically the same as yellow cards. I think it puts them on all tables, and there's some more out there in the foyer too. But I guess the question was, yeah, ILRC, you can get more of them, but at the moment, if you go to ILRC's website, you can Google ILRC red cards. They show on the website that they get so many requests for them that it's taking a while to send more. But Sharma Crawford Law Firm posted some white cards on their social media. You can find this stuff. You can talk to lawyer friends, make your own version, just print them out. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say at Vibrant Health, we've also been printing off our own. So the templates are there on the ILRC website. Anyone can just print them off and cut some out for their spaces. And then in the CCIR newsletter, we've also included links to other languages that might not be included in the ILRC website as well. So in the upcoming newsletters, or refer back to the previous ones if you have joined before.
Yeah, I had a question going back to what Raymond was talking about. You kind of touched on like state benefits and FAFSA and your recommendation. Something that I heard you say was like, you've already applied, just keep going like they already have that. Is that still your recommendation if someone is newer here that they've never applied? And also specifically concerning taxes. So like FAFSA, yes, they get something for their children, but does continuing to pay your taxes help you even in the future somehow? Or could you speak to your recommendation?
So as of today, March 7th, 2025, it's always subject to change. If someone is new and applying for a state benefit, usually it's a parent filing for their children in most respects. If the child, usually born here, U.S. citizen, or has legal status, is eligible for the benefit, but they are asking for parental information that either is no legal status or pending, hasn't earned status at this time. If the person is eligible for the benefit, I would still encourage requesting the benefit that you're eligible for. You've paid taxes for that benefit. You're eligible for it. And it's sometimes life dependent, medical care. In the context of FAFSA could mean the difference between going to school or not being able to go to school. Now, I firmly believe that all of us need to be whistleblowers. Like there should be people at those agencies now that will blow the whistle should they find out that information is being shared wider than the law says they should be shared or can be shared. Right now, there are clear lines as to what can and cannot be shared. Do I expect this administration to honor all of those laws? I do not. And that's why it is going to be very, very important to create lawsuits. So say, for instance, you're brought into a criminal court because they say you filed something inaccurately, but how, or maybe they want to use that information to detain you with ICE. If they came across that information in an illegal way, you can have defenses to protect you either criminally or to say I was wrongfully detained, and to stop that practice, they can issue injunctions to stop it. As far as taxes, in particular, there are separate laws through the IRS that say you must file your taxes, and if you don't, you are also evading taxes, which could carry criminal charges. And so through the I-10 is how people request their 9-digit number. So it's very much similar to a social security card, but it is issued through the IRS. It has nothing to do with the Social Security office, but it is intended to be used in order to pay taxes. And so as it stands right now, I do represent people facing deportation proceedings, and I've done Freedom of Information Act requests for many of my clients to see exactly what has happened with they themselves in particular when it comes to the interactions with the government, what the government has said about this person. They share often a lot of that information. I am not seeing Department of Homeland Security having access to everybody's I-10 filed taxes. So somebody with no legal status, it's a crime if you don't file your taxes and it's found out about. But I would not say don't file your taxes. I would say you are also causing a risk if you don't do so.
Yeah, I had a question. This is for a teammate who had to leave early, but she wanted to know, it's a very just simple question, hopefully to answer. And then I have one of my own. If there's not room under the door for the warrant to slide under the door, can they open the door if there's a chain on it? And just, so what would you recommend then? Leave it in a mailbox and they pick up, or
There's usually a window at the house. Put it up to the window.
just hold it up to the window?
Hold it up to the window. I need to see what it is that you have in your possession.
Okay. Now, the second question, I'm really confused. When ICE then can they ever legally arrest a person, take a person in? I'm confused by that.
There's nothing in any law anywhere that says an ICE official cannot make a request to the district court to put on file, I want an arrest warrant for this person, or I want a search warrant for this or that premises. ICE has been questioned as to why they don't do that, and they don't do it.
What is their purpose?
Well, when ICE was questioned as to why don't you do it, they say it's inefficient. It takes a lot of time. We don't have time for that. We know who we want. We're going to have this ICE official sign it from Chicago.
So they're counting on ignorance.
They're counting on us not knowing our rights. They're counting on us basically giving up our rights to that official who comes. And so the Constitution does not have a built-in protection that it takes too much damn time to get the official warrant. That is not part of what our Constitution allows. You either have the warrant or you don't. And if you don't have it, you can't enter that premises.
Related to that, we have a question on the webinar that says they understand that ICE agents lie, but is it actually legal for them to do so?
I'm not a lawyer. I don't give legal advice, but just community experience we shared. Like, again, if you see some doing something questionable, try to get that recorded so you can prove what happened. We show it to lawyers as soon as possible and see if you can do something with that. Like, an example would be, even though this wasn't ICE, it was HSI that went into that restaurant in Liberty a few weeks ago. They didn't come in with a warrant. We knew from talking to the management there, they asked the management to hand over copies of every worker's W-2s and I-9s. The management did not know that. They didn't really have to comply with that. There was no warrant. Okay, well, luckily, a lot of those people affected were in contact with lawyers within a few days. And I believe there was no warrant ever shown. I think that helped lawyers use the Castanon settlement and applies to our region until May. So lawyers are going to know all those things that are always changing every year to year, month to month, that might be able to help someone's case. And
if I can add something, so from individuals and families' perspectives, Raymond, you mentioned this earlier, once the detention has happened, once the lie has happened, the damage has been done. And so then for a lot of our families, yes, fight the man, fight the system. But while somebody's taking all these years through court and they already lost their family member.
And then going off of that, another ICE related question is, does ICE actually have a right to pull people over? Can you just not pull over if ICE wants to stop you?
So I would say that ICE, on the other question, does lie, will lie, and will continue to lie to try to achieve their ends. And the means to get there is not something that has been respected under any administration, and much less they feel unshackled now to do more of whatever they feel is needed in order to do so, to do what they think is their job. And so, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
The question was,
Oh.
can you just not pull over if ICE?
So again, it's all about the Constitution. Probable cause to believe, if you're ICE, that somebody is undocumented. Now, below probable cause is reasonable suspicion. You must have probable cause. Like we have enough evidence to believe like that this person may not have legal status. Reasonable suspicion cannot be obtained by pulling somebody over on a traffic violation. So most times it's due to a police interaction. The police interaction itself, because somebody has an infraction, runs a red light or rolls through a stop sign, that is not reasonable suspicion or probable cause that somebody is undocumented. And you cannot, it's a pretextual stop is what they call it. If you pull somebody over because you believe, like, but I need to find out more later whether or not this person is undocumented, it's a pretextual stop, which is illegal to do. You cannot pull somebody over when you have no knowledge, no reasonable suspicion or probable cause that somebody is undocumented. So the long answer that I just gave, it can be shortened to say, no, it is not legal for ICE to pull somebody over unless, and if they do, you enact your rights. You say, why was I pulled over? Am I free to go? Do you have a warrant for my arrest? They're like, no, we believe you're undocumented. They're not going to use that word. You have no constitutional right to have done that or to believe that. And it's like, oh, and then if they say, well, we know who you are, and they name you because they read your license plate, that is not probable cause that you're undocumented. And do you have a warrant for my arrest? And then you stay in that vehicle, you make the phone calls, you call an attorney, and you ultimately need to have somebody exercise a warrant for your arrest, show it through your window in order for you to actually have an enforceable warrant for your detention. And until then, you ask, am I free to leave? And then you remain silent after that.
So in the vein of, whoa, I'm very loud, advocacy and allyship, we are less than 30 days out from an election. And so I was wondering if any organizations that you're aware of, or if any of you do, have fair ballot language on issues that are coming up or might be on a ballot at some point, where folks can find out how they can best vote to help immigrants and to keep terrible things from being enacted into law.
I would just say, I wish Micah were here. I'm sure the ACLU does track such exactly your question.
I can mention, it's not new, but especially in the past few months, I feel like AIR has been working very closely with ACLU, and we're so happy for their aid. But also just throughout the year, AIR is keeping tabs on bills proposed in Missouri and Kansas, and they're also involved in coalition calls. And so one thing you might do is, like, there's a few Facebook pages you might follow if you want to stay up to date. AIR could be one, because we'll put, a call for petition signatures out there. But also there's groups like KS is keeping tabs. I know you follow their Facebook page. And then Sharma Crawford's, which is a law firm, many good law firms here. I just want to point out, though, in the past 2 months, they've had so many social media posts that are just really helpful in clarifying about any immigration policy changes that happen. So AIR KC, so Advocates for Immigrant Rights and Reconciliation. Our Facebook page will have updates when we know about questionable bills being proposed in Kansas or Missouri state. KS Moda.
And that's going to be KSMODA, KS Moda.
And then for quick updates about immigration policy changes, Sharma Crawford law firm, they've been doing a lot of good posts lately about what you should know in a short space. So those are sometimes are good quick references, and then you might see from there where you can. There's a really large immigration community network in KC beyond those groups, but it might be a good starting point and see where you can connect to other large scale policy. National level, NIJC, NILC, National Immigration Justice Center, and National Immigration Legal Center, Clinic Legal. There's all these national groups that are also on always questioning things on the national level that you might start looking into.
And this will be a plug for the resource guide that CSER is working on. Yes, write these names down, but then think about how you stay connected afterwards. Because what are those newer organizations? Who else has a new project? And so then maybe you can help us be a part of the team as we develop this resource guide that goes beyond immigrant specific services, but then maybe do we need to include a piece on voting and education?
Hi, I work at a college here in the metro, and we have developed protocol for how to deal with an instance where ICE might come to one of our campuses. In that protocol, we've designated areas where we would take the ICE agents to that's away from our students, from our staff, while we say we need you to stay here while we're contacting our legal counsel. But we don't know where they're going to show up on one of our campuses. How important is it once we say we need you to go here, so we talk to our legal counsel, but somehow that path takes them through the cafeteria? Can they break away from what you've already told them, or is it important to have a path laid out that keeps them away from students and staff, just like the designated areas we identified?
I would say that any designated area as private is a premises that ICE cannot enter. So I guess in my mind, I'm thinking of various buildings. Every building in a public space, ICE agents can enter the public space, but they have no right to enter any designated private spaces. So say they're not at the main building or even at the main campus, but if they're in one building and it's not the main building, then the same principles apply. They cannot just search every classroom or just have free reign. They must have a warrant in order to search each individualized area, and it needs to be specific. The warrant should not say to go free reign over the whole campus. And so if they enter, regardless of which building, main building or not, the same principles apply. I would hold them off and tell them, you have to stay here. You're not allowed to go anywhere else, even if it's not the designated spot. It's it's one of those things. Mike Tyson says everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face, and that's where this sort of comes in. Is that the plan needs to be flexible in case something like that happens.
So if we stumble upon ICE interacting with somebody and we're not supposed to get the person's name or anything, how do you get, if we send this to the rapid response, how do you find out who this person was if they get detained?
Oh, you could interact with the family. We just recommend that you're not trying to get all that on the camera.
What if there's no family and it's just a single person gets detained?
Oh, yeah, that's a tricky situation. But at the very least, if we could, if you happen to be the first responder and you saw everything you were able to see and document it, sometimes we've seen that when we get out to the rapid response network, I've just been so impressed with the community sleuthing that people are doing really quick to help figure out. There's a case some weeks ago. We got calls about some Indian restaurant that was possibly affected when it wasn't clear if it was ICE or not in Overland Park, and it wasn't clear exactly where. All we had in the call was that it was off of Metcalf. Like, well, which Indian restaurant? But within a few hours, a lot of people in the rapid response network, including some who are immigration lawyers, some who are local to the area, just people figured out a lot really quick. That's what I was impressed by. So whatever we can document, that helps us to kind of figure out faster who to connect with.
The way I process that would be one of two things. I either know my rights, so I'm putting myself in the position of the person you're talking about, or somebody can show up or sees what's going on and they know enough about what rights somebody has to encourage that person to exercise those rights. So say that doesn't happen and I'm the person that's being targeted. You're only supposed to share your name. After that, what's your legal status? What's your address? Silence. sharing your name and sharing nothing else create reasonable suspicion that you're undocumented? It does not. And so I am a citizen. If I show up at a checkpoint and they ask me questions beyond my name, I am not going to answer. And I encourage all with legal status to do exactly the same. Practice your rights. And if they violate it, document it, make them pay for it. You can have a court injunction like happened in Chicago, where they said ICE officers cannot break the window of a vehicle when they pull them over because they don't have a warrant. You can't just break a window and pull somebody out without a warrant. That actually happened in Kansas City as well. That was a violation of that person's constitutional rights. Kansas City, Missouri Police Department did not pay for it. So at least what happened in Chicago was that civil rights organizations stepped in and sued the ICE local there in Chicago, ICE national, and a court ruled that once it happened to that person, that they can no longer do that practice. And if they do, then the agents themselves would be criminally liable for assault, and they can lose their job. There should be and needs to be consequences for a violation of these rights. What I will say, the gray area is what happens to the individual that was targeted. That then becomes what I would say the bad news is, once somebody is in the system, detained, processed, they're not going to really undetain. I think they should. But the consequence of that unlawful arrest, what I've seen in practice is that it's not the individual that will be saved. It is the process that was used to detain that person that gets questioned and challenged.
You know, and I'll say that because when you mentioned earlier, like fire prevention, this is where we're at. And mental health first aid, something that's not a crisis or it is a crisis. So is it not a crisis right now? This is the moment where we take advantage of educating, learning. We try our best, because if we get to this moment where it was wrong, it was illegal, it was etc., they were still detained. And so then I think, I know we're getting close on time, but I think that all of us as, service providers, again, you have trusted relationships with families. I think why should they even trust you? Because maybe your organization has never talked about immigration. And now we're going to go back to work all excited and with our red cards and yellow cards. And they're going to say, Bob, ¿tú quieres hablar conmigo acerca de esto? Bob, you want to talk to me about this? Why should I trust you? So approach with empathy, understanding, sympathy, and understanding that maybe we're all ready, because I want people to know their rights, but people are still afraid. So continue to build your trusted relationships, because maybe that one person that's all alone and they have no family, you may be that one person who's like, hey, I know we don't talk about this stuff, and I know we're not in a crisis right now, but I found this and I want you to take care of yourself. And I don't need to know your immigration status, but I think there's so much power, collective power, that you all have here because you have those relationships. But then also we never talk about this. So just find a balance and find ways to share these with people.
A couple more ICE-related questions from the webinar. If ICE asks to see my ID, should I show my work permit and then remain silent afterwards? Would that be enough to keep me safe, or should I just not identify myself to them at all?
Share your name. If they ask your legal status, I would say you have one of two choices: remain silent, or if you believe you're a permanent resident with no reason that an agent would do anything more once they're satisfied that you have a legal status, that means you shouldn't be detained unless they catch you in a criminal act of doing something that they could possibly take away your residency. I would give the green light to say, hey, I'm a resident. Here's my green card. Am I detained? That's what I would do, but you also have the right to remain silent on that question.
Okay, so we've gotten a lot of information, and I know what to do. So if I'm I want to make sure I have it straight. If I'm out in public and I see something that I believe is ICE activity and they're, approaching people, as a citizen, just in public, I film, but
is there someone I should call as well? Or what are the steps? Like if I see this happening, what are the ideal steps that should be taken as someone, as a citizen, as an ally, to help the situation?
I wonder if we can go back to my slide. At the end of my slides, I usually try to end with our hotline. There's a hotline number that's shareable. We're trying not to overly advertise it so that the right calls come in, but it's out there for the community. And yeah, AIR has the hotline, but also when we get those calls, it goes out to our signal group, and there's many groups involved, many allies who help see who can mobilize really quick. But yeah, more pertinently, if you had a particular immigration lawyer that you have immediate like communication with, that could make things faster. But at least to get first responders out there quickly to record and question, so on, that's a hotline, that's a resource. I wonder if are we able to show that for my slides, the number?
Send out all the resources that are being shared today in a post-event summary, so you'll get that hotline number as well.
And just remember that it's a whole community network involved. So you might also think if there's a more pertinent issue in your particular neighborhood, like how can you start mobilizing your neighbors to talk with empathy and having the conversation in the right way at the right time, but how could there be a community plan in place if something was going to happen? That kind of get to your question? Yeah.
It does. Yeah. I just want to make sure I do everything I can do and take all the, take the proper steps. Like, is it more important to make a call and then film what I'm seeing, or can I film and then make a call? I guess is kind of like if I want to do all the things.
Both at the same time, it'd be great, but we have one phone, but you're gonna have to make the call at the moment. What's more pertinent, I guess. But
thank you guys.
I have a question. So we saw, the judicial papers and then the ICE, the ones that they look scary. I mean, even if you're telling me all this information, like in that moment when, you senses are heightened and you're like, what do I do? Even if you have all this training, if they don't speak English, or I'm sorry, yes, if they don't speak English, and so they can't identify like, well, is that a judge or is that not a judge? What's, in Spanish, it's juez, so it's not going to say juez. How in the most basic, I guess, way, what are like, I don't even know, like, what can I do to help them identify and train them? And then what, in that moment, if they can't remember anything because, everything's up in the air, what's the one thing that they can look for and say like, no, like, it's not like, and I know you gave the training, but it looks scary and daunting, so.
I would start by saying that's why we're here. I said as part of my presentation that it's going to come down to us and us working with and educating each other to know what to do if and when that time comes. I think all of us, Darren mentioned, like we have to not just hear it, learn it, know it to the point where you can maybe explain it to others, and most importantly, put it into practice when it happens to you. And so I'm here because I know it's important. This is very, 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 very important. And it is scary. It's absolutely scary. The mentality piece that needs to be ingrained is your badge, your uniform does not allow you to violate my constitutionally protected rights. Badges means that they've gone through a program and they're certified to be an ICE agent. It doesn't mean they no longer have to follow the Constitution. And so as long as people know at an individual level, or though those of you become the trusted person that somebody who's undocumented calls when the stuff hits the fan, and if you have access to show up, you can be the person who helps squash that unconstitutional search or seizure of a person. And a lot of us work at organizations. It is very, very important to practice, implement it and practice it over and over again, like a fire drill.
A question from the web. Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I have one more for Celia. Is the Cuidémonos handbook in other languages as well?
No, but I'm open to volunteers if anybody else speaks any other languages. I would just say connect with a resource group that we're creating. That's where we can have the opportunity to work on other languages.
We do have a resource for that in the resource guide that will come out after this too. There is an English version. It's not the same, though, I will add, is it's from a different organization, but it is in English.
If I'm filming, would ICE or Homeland Security ask me my name and do I have to give it to them, or do they tell me if they say stop filming? I mean, as me taking the video, what are my rights? Or
I actually want to turn around for a second as a practice moment. Like, imagine that happens. Well, you know, might not know the perfect answer, but think back to first, fourth, and fifth amendments. What would you think you should do? You're the one filming. I'm assuming you're a citizen, and they say back up, or they say, "What's your name? Show me your ID." What would you do?
I think I would back up,
Okay.
but I don't, and I think I'd give them my name, but I wouldn't give them anything else.
Do you have to give them your name?
I don't know. Do I? I guess maybe not. That's
Like,
what I'm asking.
why are they questioning your name? Right.
I'm sorry.
Did you
what?
do anything wrong by filming?
I don't think so. I see lots of people filming.
This is
It's on TV.
this is the tricky thing. This is like why you want to practice you say, okay, if it ever happened, like, yeah, I know how my personal reaction is going to be. I know that if I'm sometimes a little too nice, then I need to practice to be a little more firm and stand up for my rights. I know, sorry, but I don't think you have to show them your ID though, right? No.
You do not. I mean, I'll answer the question what I would do. I mean, if I know that I'm violating no law in what I am doing, I'm gonna stand my ground. And if the ultimate question is, am I willing to be arrested for doing something that's not illegal to do? I guess I'm gonna be arrested that day. But I'm gonna film it, I'm gonna share it before that happens. And what is the crime that I committed? What judge is gonna convict me of trespassing or interference of a law enforcement operation? I was filming. It's on film. You can see how I responded, what I said or didn't say, what my actions were. They asked me to step up. You can see the camera kind of looking like it's zooming back out. And if they're going to violate my rights by saying I cannot film it, let's go to court.
And I'm thinking of Micah. Are they huffing and puffing?
So I understand, like, I can film probably if I'm on public property, but if they're like standing on someone's yard, can I stand on the yard to take because that's private property?
I guess my first question would be who would bring the trespassing charge? But if it's the property owner who's the target of the search or seizure, then the police wouldn't bring that charge against you. But I would just say, as long as you're not violating any law and you have a foot on the grass, let's just say, for instance, and then I'm still brought to court and they say I was interfering in a law enforcement operation, bring that charge with you as well, trespassing and interfering with a law enforcement operation. I don't think I was doing either one. I'll see you in court.
Okay, I'm just not sure what the law is all the time, so that's why I'm asking. Yeah.
I have a question. So yesterday, unfortunately, Vibrant Health received a call in the pharmacy. It was left a message, a voicemail, someone who was impersonating ICE, asking us if we serve migrants. We're going to call them. We'll be in touch. They didn't leave a message, or they didn't leave a number or a name, but we can track the number back to where it was. Is there something we should do with that?
We got a similar thing to our hotline once. At the moment, we're trying to document when those things happen, and I don't have an immediate legal answer to that because I'm not a lawyer, but my mind does go to we're trying to document everything we're seeing for the future, and maybe with legal partners and national groups in the future, we might be able to do something with this. I'm not talking about one individual case, but like the pattern of what we're seeing in Kansas City. That's, again, not legal advice, just my observation about things I see people doing in this time.
It is against the law to impersonate a law enforcement official. I don't know exactly what was said, if it rises to the level of harassment or a threat to injure or harm anybody for providing services to undocumented people. There are different things that one can do that could possibly rise to the level of criminality. If it was a phone call, somebody lying to you, then saying they're a nice official, or just asking in general without saying they're a nice official, do you serve undocumented people, things of that nature. That may not rise to the level of a crime, but it should, as Trinidad said, it should be documented. I don't know, find out as much as you could about who might have made that phone call.
I just had a question about some of the organizations under the Department of Homeland Security, like the National Trafficking Hotline, the hotline for unaccompanied youth who are seeking asylum. Are those still safe places to reach out when we need to?
Which organizations?
The National Trafficking Hotline, and I think CCIR also actually had a training a few years ago from them, kind of about the rights that, that community, like any community has if there is suspected labor trafficking or other types of trafficking, but it's technically under the Department of Homeland Security. And then there's also a hotline that I utilize sometimes for unaccompanied youth that they can reach out to for support regarding their sponsors, things like that. Are those still safe?
The intent of those organizations is to be victim-centered to assist those who are victims of such crimes. So to me, the question within that question is that information subject or liable in the future to ever be shared to go after a victim based on their immigration status? And so we live in a changing world where I worry about the answer to that question. I would say keep the dialogue open, like understand what the resources are. It may come to the point where we need alternative ways in which that trusted individuals and organizations might be the first line to reach out to. Here locally, there are very great nonprofits that work in that arena, victims of different sorts of crimes. I would maybe say start there first and then consult with an immigration attorney to try to figure out if that entity can be trusted. I would hope the answer is yes, that nothing has changed, but we do live in a changing world.
Hi, Raymond. If ICE comes to a clinical facility or a church with a valid warrant that has a name on it, and they claim it's a patient or a parishioner, is the staff at the clinical setting or the parish, like, do they have the obligation to confirm that there is such individual in the facility?
The warrant needs to be verified. If a law enforcement agency, it could be the police or ICE, if they've gone through the motions to know that somebody with the correct name, your address at your facility, and the time and scope as to when they can execute that warrant is all valid, and a person, and that person might be in a private space receiving care of any sort. They show up to your building. They have a warrant for that one person. You would execute your plan. For instance, you would say, wait here. It could be in the waiting room or outside the building, whichever, where you got to work with the situation you're under. What you don't want is them searching the whole facility. What you don't want is them doing what they call collateral arrests, arrest other people or question anybody else. What I would do if I was the frontline person, which is usually not the CEO, we all know that, needs to know what to do in that instance. Talk to a supervisor to get to the person who actually knows how to handle the situation, that can direct other staff to know how to handle that situation. Short answer is, if they have an official warrant and they've done their homework to get to that point, then non-compliance with that warrant is also a crime for the person not allowing the warrant to be executed.
And a quick note, I just observed that some churches and schools, as Raymond and Nico mentioned earlier, are trying to designate clearly where the private spaces are. Pastors might have their pastoral office as a private space if someone needs to go there.
So on the Cuidémonos website, there's that QR code there. There's a guide not created by me from like a national business immigration coalition or something. And it says what to do if immigration shows up to your place of work. And it talks about this, and it says create your private spaces, and it talks about the pre-work. identify a manager or the person who is responsible to receive ICE officers if they were to show up. And then that person is then responsible for then implementing all the other steps. So I think this is also another point of conversation is prepare yourself as an organization. What is your policy? What are your actual steps? Who is that person? What is that place that you've identified? And so between us, wherever us ends up being, I ended up just printing some private signs and laminating them and gave them to some good partners that I have. So make your private spaces.
And you're not, sorry.
Yeah.
You're not breaking any law if you have private spaces. You lock those doors and your instruction to all staff is don't open your door. And maybe have somebody designated to actually talk to the person that is targeted for the warrant to let them know the situation and I mean the law says that warrant should be executed, but that person has a couple of choices. They can always decide to do what they want. If they want to violate something of that warrant, you shouldn't physically stop them, I guess you could say, but you are not interfering with the enforcement of that warrant. What I would do is I would explain the ramifications of not complying, which include collateral arrest if they're there also with other family members that may not have legal status. And I would say this: I've been face to face with ICE agents once at the immigration court where they arrested one of my clients. And so you get as much information as you think you need, but you do not have to comply with the warrant with like a snap of the finger. You can ask for a reasonable amount of time to call family member, call a lawyer. The agent may not be willing to give you that time, but you as the person can try to gather as much information. Who should I call? Do you have a lawyer? What is your plan for this? And then if they agree to be detained, then you help facilitate that as well. That's what I would do.
I had a question. I was in the health and wellness, and we would at medical clinics, they have a right to interpretation, and we tell them to say no English, Espanol, and we advocate that. So, with ICE interactions, can you guys speak to like, is there right, like interpreting rights in those interactions? If someone says no English, Espanol, like, are they allowed to, does that help them? Like, or can you speak a little bit to that?
I would say likely not. So I'm also assuming that there's not an agent that is bilingual either. And I would even say, even still in that instance, if they believe they have a judicial warrant, the actual right to detain somebody, I believe they're going to show them like their name. Usually somebody will know nombre, like at least enough to try to ask the pertinent questions to know that we have the person that we're targeting. But in every other instance, if the ICE agent does not have the proper documents in their hand in order to arrest somebody, regardless of the language spoken, the rights are still the same.
Going off of that, on the webinar, someone says, let's say you are scared and don't speak English and just decide to keep the door closed. You just take the approach that it's very unlikely that ICE is actually doing things right. Are there any additional penalties associated with that? Associated with the assumption that ICE is probably doing stuff wrong anyway, so you just keep your door closed.
99% of the time, ICE is doing something wrong. 99% of the time, they do not have an enforceable judicial warrant. And so that's the main point. And so the law says the ICE agents, they can wait outside your door until eternity unless they have the correct documents that allow them to enter the premises. You have the right to enforce what are your constitutional rights. That's in your vehicle, that's in your car, that's at your workplace, that's on the street, everywhere. You have your rights. They don't get taken away. There is not a timeline that says after 2 hours, you no longer have constitutional rights. That is not a thing. And everybody needs to know that.
I have a question. So a couple of weeks ago, I saw a video on Instagram of this man being taken from ICE, and he was just like in Spanish, he's like, "My wife is pregnant, my wife is pregnant," and so, but there's no way to identify like who he was. So like in a situation where you don't know the individual, you don't know anything about the person you are recording, what are you supposed to do? Like how, like in this man's case, like how would you alert his pregnant wife that he's been taken if you don't really, if you don't want to like say the name or anything like that? Like how do you react in that situation? I don't know if that makes sense.
Can you say a little more about the video? So what happened in the video?
It was a video on Instagram that somebody had shared, and this guy was being taken by ICE, and he was just like, "My wife is pregnant," but this person recording was like, "Well, I don't know what to do. I'm just recording this interaction." So, just watching that video myself, I'm like, "Yeah, if this individual doesn't know this person, what are you supposed to do if you don't know who's being taken? I assume you won't ever know who's being taken, but how do you help that person?"
Well, yeah, at least try to record everything you can and document everything you can. It might have happened quick. It's not much else you can say to do about it. And didn't have time to ask the guy how to contact his family. But at least get it recorded, call the rap response hotline, see if you have copies of that video, show the immigration lawyer friends fast. Because there's not that ICE mostly uses Chase County Detention Center. They might get the Leavenworth one, but it's not hard to narrow down where they're probably going to be detained and seeing if there's some way we could follow up with it. It might take a little community sleuthing, but I've been really impressed with what the community sometimes is able to put together. But also a good chance to see like, well, what neighborhood did it happen in? Are we paying attention to where the workplace? Maybe that's where the person lives or works in the community. Maybe it's some community sleuthing can help us get in contact with the family and just figure out what was going on.
Okay, we just have a couple rapid fire questions from the webinar. Does HIPAA allow a mental health care provider not to disclose whether an individual is a client if the agent has a warrant?
If they have an actual enforceable warrant. So again, that's going to be the premise here. And they've named the premises. They've named the person, the correct identification, everything. Then the principle that was explained about the medical clinics would come into place. But HIPAA is not the rule that is violated if you don't comply. What would be non-compliant is they have an enforceable warrant that you did not comply with. The HIPAA protections remain. What kind of diagnosis does this person have? No, absolutely not. Tell me more about this person and all your involvement with them. No. I can say a lot of bad things, what I would say to that person, but tell them where to go.
And what if a person being detained has no way of contacting a loved one or a lawyer? How do you help them while filming?
So one thing I'm thinking of is, so the Mexican consulate, they are sharing their phone number. And so you can look at Mexican consulate, Kansas City, and it's called CIAM, CIAM, and it's Centro something, but the attention, it's customers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, calling. And you can even download an app where it says, I've been detained, I'm pushing this button, I'm notifying my Mexican consulate, and they will know to come look for me. That's Mexican consulate. Not everyone is Mexican. So then people need to figure out what is a way, what plan do they have to notify someone else if they can't get a hold of their loved one? Because then that happens, right? There just is no time. I don't know people's phone number. Who am I supposed to call? But those are things that we prepare for.
I would just say that here locally, most times, unless the government feels they have a reason not to comply, most times somebody will be processed, will be detained at one of the local immigration detention facilities, and will be given a sheet of paper with either low bono or pro bono immigration service providers, such that that person can has the number, can call such an entity, and then hopefully at that point be able to share whatever information they do have about either who to contact or have questions about what do I do. I know zero about what's going on with me. Can you help me? And the hope is that that service provider would be able to take it at least from that to something a lot better than nothing.
Somewhat not immediate to that question, but related. If you know someone being affected, if you're able to ask them what their A number is, because you can use that to look up the ICE locator to see where someone's being detained, or EIOR to see where someone's case status is at. Probably better in consultation with a lawyer, but if it's just your local friends and family, that's all you got. See if you can be aware of the A number. And then we just updated our website, so we need to make sure it shows on our new website, but we have a recommended immigration lawyer list for Enrico's on it. And just people can refer to that if they need some quick references on the immigration lawyer network.
And should people establish services with an immigration attorney before the worst case scenario happens? I think this is pretty broad-ended for whether it's an individual or an organization.
Consultations, I would always recommend. The way I look at it visually is that when I meet somebody for the first time, every door under the Immigration Nationality Act is open. And through my series of questions, I close doors actually. And so after all of my questions are answered, I take a look at the landscape and I see, or I say, it looks like these are the options for you. Often, maybe not all the time, but often we are able to see an avenue to legalization that the person never knew existed. We can investigate further. So anybody who's undocumented, I do think it's a good idea to at least have a consultation. Most immigration attorneys do not work on retainer. I would say they do not say, no matter what happens, we're going to represent you. But many say, if something does happen, please reach out to us, to an immigration attorney at least, to try to troubleshoot whatever's going on at that point. I guess the retainer part is because we never know what exactly is going to be the situation that could potentially happen. And so, and I don't want to charge somebody if I'm never going to have to do anything in their situation either. So it kind of works both ways to why there's not a lot of retainers in the immigration field. It's a good idea to consult with an immigration attorney to at least have that once, maybe in your lifetime, an analysis as to the landscape, as to what your legal status, what your legal paths might be.
Okay, we will wrap up with one more in-person question. I think there were a couple hands up.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today and for fielding our questions at the end here. We are poised to start doing or resuming some listening sessions and some focus groups. This is a very delicate situation. Many of them are going to be held for our Spanish first communities over in Wyandotte County. And we are very concerned about developing protocol and establishing good relationships in order to protect those who do opt to attend our sessions. Given the different things and scenarios that can happen and play out in public space versus private space, what's the best way to establish private space within a public area, such as, say, a public library, in order to protect our folks that are attending our sessions? Should we RSVP? Can we work with that entity ahead of time to make sure that we have private space? So if there's ever somebody coming into that public space and identifying themselves as ICE. Thank you.
Just a quick suggestion. My first thought is this is an opportunity for us to reinvent what has been typical in the past. So maybe we've always used a library. Maybe we've always used a community center. Maybe we've always done this on the weekend. What do families feel most comfortable with right now? And I would probably kind of work backwards instead of saying like, all right, we've always held this every Tuesday, Thursday. What do our families want? So I would just, out of curiosity, I would start on that end. And then whatever the answer would be for private spaces and these public spaces.
ICE agents usually don't go near the constitutional law area of libraries. I'm just kidding. But libraries are very public. Execute your plan. And plans can be flexible. But again, it's just the generic scenario. There's somebody designated to interact with the ICE agent. Obviously, that person has legal status. Is everybody that's in the public library subject to search and being questioned? Or is everybody that's in that library actually free to go? Maybe not, don't run, don't run away. Also, what might happen is that those that are US citizens are going to be like, I'm not scared. And then those that don't have legal status are going to be scared as hell. That visual is actually something very suspicious to an ICE agent. If somebody runs, that can lead to that person being detained for whatever reason. They can use those reasons to try to detain somebody. But if somebody is free to leave and they've only shared their name, for instance, that's not reasonable suspicion that somebody's undocumented. So if there's 80 people in a library and they think they want to arrest somebody, maybe they named that person. You might not know. It's a public space. You might not know if that person's in there, but everybody has their rights. They remain, even if it's in this room right now. Am I free to leave? Are you detaining me? Or what? I have the right to know. Record it, everything. All the same principles apply, even in the most public of spaces, in a library, on the street. It's still applicable. The plan needs to be flexible, but again, that person designated there, who are you here for? Be blunt about it. Do you have a warrant? If not, I'm asking you to leave. And guess what? That officer is trespassing. You can literally ask the security guard at the library to escort ICE out. That's the way the law is supposed to work. You're literally supposed to be able to call the police and say, hey, we have people trespassing into our library. We've asked them to leave. They have no right to be here. They've been asked to leave. What should happen? They should be under arrest. Will we see that happen? No, that's what the law says.
You know, and I'm going to say this again, because I'm thinking, you know, asking us to reinvent things, maybe we're the ones that get uncomfortable. The grassroots organizers, the event organizers. Maybe the listening session is not going to be all right. We're going to have these poster boards and we're going to do, maybe I'm going to set aside 7 to 9 p.m. and I'm going to make 3 individual phone calls. And hey, mom, dad, I know we were going to meet in person, but I really want to get your opinion on blank. Okay, hold on. But now that means that I need to have 20 Spanish speakers that are going to call from 7 to 9 p.m. And that means that they're going to have to flex their hours during the daytime. Maybe we just reinvent stuff and we get uncomfortable. Maybe we take on the fear.
All right, we're standing between you and lunch, so we will wrap things up.
Yes, can we give a big round of applause to our speaker?